Yeah, look at that. We have, oops. Yeah, look at that. We have a weight screen. This is getting old. We have a weight screen now. Wow. So fancy, right, guys? All right, folks. Tonight is the, I don't know what number, GOP debate. It's not really a GOP debate, but CNN is hosting a debate between Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. And that's about all there is to say about it. You guys wanted us to watch this. That's what we're watching. Let's see what happens. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. All right, folks, we are live from the great state of Florida. Welcome back. If you have joined us from our earlier stream where we were reacting live to Chris Christie dropping out of the presidential race, welcome. It's good to see you back again. So that's about all I have to say about it. Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis are going to be debating. I figured it would be interesting content, not really because of DeSantis. You know, I'm kind of like apathetic toward him overall as a candidate, but specifically because ripping on Nikki Haley for all of the right reasons, our favorite warmongering neocon establishment, feminist girl boss, liberal Republican, what else do I have to say, is a cherished pastime on this channel, and I figure tonight would be one more opportunity to do it again. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, two things. First of all, be sure to leave a like on the stream, subscribe if you are new, super chat the show. We will read super chats during the commercial breaks. That's number one. Number two is that I am honestly worried that CNN is going to copyright this stream. They have been, you know, doing that a lot with some YouTubers, but so we're tuned in right now to the feed and you can hear it, obviously, right? But I don't know if this is a copyright filter or something, because I can see it on my screen, but when I project it to the stream, it's just black. So I don't know what the deal is with that. I'm going to actually try to fix it right now, but if I'm not able to fix it, I mean, you guys will be able to hear it. It's probably a little safer for copyright purposes. I do have the screen flipped, so hopefully that doesn't like trigger the filter as easily. But yeah, let's do this, ladies and gentlemen. But I'm going to attempt. Let's see if it's successful. I'm going to attempt to see if we can, like, get the CNN screen to work here. Which, I don't know what it's doing right now. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know. Is this fine with you guys? Is it fine to watch on a black screen? I mean, we could put a picture up if you guys want. All right, do you guys want to see a little picture? But like I said, I think this is some type of copyright filter from CNN. I'm not sure exactly why, because it's never happened to me before. But as you can see, like if you look on my screen, I can see the video of this debate. But on the stream, it's just black. Okay, so that is apparently what we are dealing with. I don't know. I'll try to fix it.
Republican presidential debate between Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis.
As you can see, you can hear it just fine. Now. So let me. If it's not going to work, let me at least put a picture up. How about that? Okay.
Live from Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, this is the CNN Republican presidential debate. We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world watching us on CNN, CNN Max, CNN International, CNN en Espanol, and CNN.
All right, is that fine?
Good evening. I'm Jed Tapper, moderating tonight's debate alongside my friend and colleague, Dana Bash.
And just 5 days from now,
you have to restart computer. It's not a computer issue. It's like I think it's CNN's like copyright filter.
The very first one-on-one matchup between top contenders, Governor Ron DeSantis.
I could try refreshing the page. You want to try refreshing the page? Let's see if that does anything.
For tonight's debate, but declined to participate.
Our commitment in this debate is to provide as much information as possible to voters, especially here in Iowa, before the first contests begin next week. So in choosing topics, we focused on the issues important to Republicans. Let's bring out the candidates now. Please welcome Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Please welcome former South Carolina Governor and UN Ambassador Nikki Haley.
I'm trying to find a way around it, but I don't know if there actually is.
Candidates, please take your positions behind the podiums while we remind you and our audience of the ground rules. Each of you will have 90 seconds to answer questions, 60 seconds for responses and rebuttals, and 15 seconds for clarifications. Timing lights will remind you when time is expiring.
We also remind our audience here in the Sheslow Auditorium at Drake University to be respectful so the candidates can hear the questions and can hear each other.
Just hours ago, the Republican field narrowed once again. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie ended his bid for the presidency. So, with one fewer candidate in the running, let's start with the decision voters here in Iowa are about to face. Governor DeSantis, why should voters who are looking for an alternative to the current frontrunner, former President Trump, vote for you rather than former Governor Haley?
Well, to the people of Iowa, good evening. It's great to be in Iowa to have a debate here. Donald Trump's running to pursue his issues. Nikki Haley's running to pursue her donors' issues. I'm running to pursue your issues and your family's issues and to turn this country around. I'm the only one running that's delivered on 100% of the promises that I've made. We've delivered huge victories in the state of Florida, things that Republicans have been asking for a generation. I'm also the only one running that has beaten the left.
Why does he sound so nervous?
Time again. We beat the teachers union on universal school choice. We beat Soros on crime. We beat Fauci on COVID. We beat the Dems on election integrity. And I beat the left by banning China from buying land in the state of Florida. Now, Nikki Haley is running. We don't need another mealy-mouthed politician who just tells you what she thinks you want to hear just to try to get your vote, then to get in office and to do her donors' bidding.
Is he like crying? What's going on here?
She said the people of Iowa's votes need to be corrected. This is somebody that wrote in her book that Hillary Clinton inspired her to first run for office. I remember Hillary denigrating people on the Republican side as deplorables. We don't need a candidate who's going to look down on middle America. We've had enough of that. I'm the only one that's going to be able to lead this country's revival. I don't know what's going on with Ron's voice. I won't let you down.
Governor Haley, a response?
Bro is shaking.
Well, I think this is a time that we know that we need a new generational leader. We have watched our country be in disarray. We see the world on fire, and we need someone who's had executive experience. I've been a two-term governor that took a double-digit unemployment state and turned it into an economic powerhouse. I was at the UN. I dealt with Russia, China, Iran every day. But you're going to find out tonight that there's going to be a lot of Ron's lies that have happened. There are at least a couple of dozen so far that he's done. So what we're going to do is, rather than have him go and tell you all these lies, you can go to DeSantisLies.com and look at all of those. There's at least 24 lies that he's told about me, and you can see where fact checkers say exactly what's going to happen and exactly
Hillary,
why it's wrong. So it will cover the fact that he's only mad about the donors because the donors used to be with him, but they're no longer with him now. And that's because he's upset about the fact that his campaign is exploding. You're going to see the fact that he has switched his policies multiple times, and we'll call that out tonight. But every time he lies, Drake University, don't turn this into a drinking game because you will be overserved by the end of the night.
Well,
Nikki, you're so funny.
Because you can actually go to RonDeSantis.com because Nikki Haley has this tactic.
This really is the JV debate.
Hold her accountable to her record. First, she'll say, I never said that. Well, one good rule of thumb, if she says she's never said something, that definitely means she said it. And then she'll say, you're lying, you're lying. That means not only did she say it, but she's on videotape saying it. And so we have all the greatest hits. The reality is Nikki Haley is not somebody that has been willing to stand in and fight on behalf of conservatives. You know, she ran for governor saying she was going to do universal school choice, and she caved to the teachers union. She didn't deliver that.
I
In
believe
Florida,
that.
I delivered the largest expansion
Sounds
of
like
school
something
choice
she would
in the
do.
history of the United States. I beat the teachers union. And you know what the results are? When she was governor of South Carolina, she was rated 50th in education, dead last. You know where Florida is under my watch? #1 in the nation.
Your response, Governor Haley?
Go to DeSantisLies.com and you can find out for yourself. But why don't we talk about the fact that if we're going to say this, when Ron was representing Florida, he said that he promised not to raise the debt limit when he got to D.C. Yet he raised the debt limit by hundreds of billions of dollars. He used to support Ukraine. He supported Ukraine when President Obama was in office. Now he's trying to copy Trump and saying that he no longer supports
This
Ukraine
debate
and
is the
doesn't want to give
worst.
them foreign aid anymore. He also goes and says that he wants to talk about me insulting Iowans. Iowans know when you're telling a joke. The fact that he's only running in one state is not the way you win president. I'm running in all states. But he should tell Iowans why he authored legislation to ban the renewable fuel standard that's so important to Iowans' economy, and the fact that he co-sponsored 5 different pieces of legislation to get rid of it.
We need Vivek on this stage.
And also, then he also said he would never do anything with Social Security.
It sucks without him.
He voted 3 times to raise the retirement age of Social Security. So if you're going to talk about what you said and what you did, I think you've got your own explaining to do rather than telling lies about.
Thank you, Governor. We're going to get to a lot of these issues in the debate. Governor Haley, when Governor Christie dropped out of the race just a few hours ago, he said the most important issue is, quote, the character of the candidate. Governor Christie also said he ran because he knew he would be the only Republican candidate to speak the truth about former President
What about
Donald
the character
Trump.
of the country and what they're going to do to it?
Do you believe Donald Trump has the character to be president again?
Well, I think the next president needs to have moral clarity. I think you need to have moral clarity to understand that it's taxpayer money, not your own money. I think you need to have moral clarity to understand that when you're dealing with dictators in the world, that we always have to fight for democracies and human rights and protecting Americans and preventing war. And so when you look at Donald Trump, I have said, I think he was the right president at the right time. I agree with a lot of his policies, but his way is not my way. I don't have vengeance. I don't have vendettas. I don't take things personally. For me, it's very much about no drama, no whining, and getting results and getting them done.
All you do is whine.
So I don't think that President Trump is the right president to go forward. I think it's time for a new generational leader that's going to go and make America proud again. That's what I'm going to try and do.
Governor DeSantis, what is your response to Chris Christie? Do you believe Donald Trump has the character to be president again?
Well, I'm running because I'm the guy that's going to be able to engineer a comeback for this country. I appreciated what President Trump did, but let's just be honest. He said he was going to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it. He did not deliver that. He said he was going to drain the swamp. He did not deliver that. He said he was going to hold Hillary accountable, and he let her off the hook. He said he was going to eliminate the debt, and he added $7.8 trillion to the debt. So we need to deliver and get this stuff done. And I think the difference between Nikki Haley and me, I listened to all that litany of stuff. I debated the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. I thought he lied a lot. Nikki Haley gives him a run for his money, and she may even be more liberal than Gavin Newsom is.
True.
We are in a situation here in Florida.
That part is true.
As Republicans, you need somebody that is going to be in there and fight for you. And Nikki Haley, anytime the going gets tough, anytime people come down, she caves. When you need someone standing and fight for you, don't look for Nikki Haley. You won't be able to find her if you had a search warrant.
Thank you, Governor. Governor Haley?
Look, I think I dealt with Russia, China, Iran, North Korea every day. No one ever said I caved. I defended America, and I fought for America.
You were the UN ambassador. You didn't do anything.
This is not a time where you have to have pettiness. I wish Donald Trump was up here on this stage. He's the one that I'm running against. He's the one that I wish would be here. He needs to be defending his record. Right now, he's not defending the fact that he allowed us to have $8 trillion in debt over 4 years that our kids are never going to forgive us for. The fact that he didn't deal with China when it came to stealing intellectual property. The fact that they gave us COVID. The fact that they've gone and continued to put up up Chinese police stations and continue to threaten our military. He didn't do enough to make sure that we were really standing with our friends and doing some other things. What we need is a leader that's not looking at 4 years and 8 years. We need a president that's looking at 20 and 30 years, because I want my kids to have a good future. I want them to have one without debt, one where they can read, one with secure borders, one where we have law and order, and one where America is strong.
Well,
Thank you.
with all due respect, you know, for her to single out Donald Trump on China, and look, I think he could have been tougher on him 100%. When Nikki Haley was governor of South Carolina, she was the #1 governor in America for Republicans of bringing China into her state. She wrote a love letter to the ambassador saying that they were a great friend. She's on video saying China's a friend. She had a business, Chinese business, 5 miles from a military base. There's a video of her on the website right in front of a Chinese flag saying that she works for them now. So that was her #1 achievement as governor, was bringing China into the state of South Carolina. So you say you're going to look 10, 20, 30 years down the road? Why wasn't she doing that then when people were raising the red flags about it? In Florida, I banned China from buying land in our state,
Governor
and we
DeSantis,
kicked them out of our university. That's what you need to be doing.
We're going to
got
talk
her
about
there.
China in a little bit. I want to talk about
got
the
her there.
economy,
That was good.
which, according to a recent Des Moines Register poll, shows that the economy is the top issue for caucus goers here. So, Governor Haley, the rate of inflation is down. Prices, though, are still high, and Americans are struggling to afford food, cars, and housing. What is the single most important policy that you would implement as president to make the essentials in Americans' lives more important?
I think we have to acknowledge that Republicans and Democrats have both done this. I mean, the fact that they've done all of this wasteful spending, they did a $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill that expanded welfare, that's now left us with 80 million Americans on Medicaid, 42 million Americans on food stamps. That's a third of our country. What I will do is I think it's time we have an accountant in the White House. We have to have someone that respects taxpayer dollars. And we'll start by clawing back $100 billion of unspent COVID dollars that are still out there. We'll go in, instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, we'll go after the
Nikki
hundreds
Haley
of
respects
billions
taxpayer
of
dollars.
COVID fraud, 1 out of every $7. If 8% of our budget is interest, quit borrowing, cut up the credit cards. I had to balance a budget as governor. You have to balance a budget every day. Why is Congress the only group that refuses to balance a budget? We'll stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, we'll eliminate the pet projects and the earmarks, and I'll veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels. And then we want to make sure that we allow the middle class to breathe. We're going to eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this country and cut taxes on the middle class and simplify those brackets. And then we want to make the small business tax cuts permanent. They made corporate tax cuts permanent, but they made small business tax cuts temporary. Small businesses are the heartbeat of America. We need to prove it by making those tax cuts permanent.
Governor DeSantis, what's your response? How would you make those essentials more affordable for Americans?
Well, I disagree with Ambassador Haley. We don't need an accountant in the White House. We need a leader in the White House, and that's what I would bring. I've spoken with Iowans, visiting all 99 counties, and also folks all across this country. The American dream is slipping away. People are working hard. They're getting the most out of their God-given ability. They're doing everything right, and they're falling further and further behind. Trying to afford a new home today, your monthly mortgage payment would probably be twice as much as what it would have been if you were starting out 5 years ago. We have to make the economy work for those folks. Yes, I'm going to battle the spending. In Florida, you look, we have the national debt clock going up to $34 trillion. I see it. If you did a debt clock for the state of Florida, it would be counting down, because we've paid down 25% of our state debt just since I've been governor. We're going to open up all energy for production, because that will be deflationary. Nikki Haley, when she was governor, she promised she would never do the gas tax. Then she tried to raise the gas tax on hardworking South Carolinians. Here's the thing. We need to fly a flag of bold colors, carrying the banner of putting the American people first, not the pale pastels of the warmed-over corporatism of people like Nikki Haley.
Governor Haley, I want to bring you in, but because Governor DeSantis mentioned the gas tax, you do want to eliminate the federal gas tax. And that tax generated approximately $40 billion in 2022 and helps pay for road construction and repair. So how would you fix America's roads and bridges if you take that money away?
Well, first of all, bless his heart, DeSantisLies.com. We have never raised a tax.
She really said
I've
bless
never
his heart.
raised a tax
You
at
tried.
all.
So
I can
cringe.
tell
You're
you
on
right.
video.
Governor DeSantis, she has the floor.
So I can tell you that we killed the gas tax multiple times. But what we said is if you want to raise the gas tax, you have to reduce the income tax by 5 times that amount. They didn't want to do it. We've killed taxes every step of the way. But if he's going to talk about his economy, I think what we should say is, why does Florida have the highest property insurance in the country? Why is it that it is named the American hotspot for inflation? Why is it that his state is now known to have the highest cost of living increases? And why is it that they're saying senior citizens can no longer afford to live in Florida? So that's the first thing I'll say. We don't need him doing that to our country. When it comes to the gas tax, when we eliminate that federal tax, the money is collected in the states and they send it to the feds. The feds attach a lot of strings to it and send it back. 75% comes from the state, 25% comes from the federal government. What they do when they add those strings is they pay for a lot of things that aren't roads, green spaces, sidewalks, all of those things, but they attach
I don't think her
strings.
accent is real,
I want that
Ryan
money to
Gosling.
stay in the states. I want the states to be able to decide how to spend it. I don't want Washington bureaucrats deciding what we need for scenery and green space and all those other things. I want every state, including the state of Iowa, to make the decisions on how they spend their road spending instead of the federal government.
Governor DeSantis, your response?
Well, she kind of admitted that she did try to raise the gas tax, and she's on video saying this. I know she'll say it. She never said it, but she
You
did.
snippet
She
that.
did.
You
She
took a
did do
little
it.
piece
She
of
did
that. That is
She
not
also,
true.
She also
You
raised
lying
taxes.
again.
She
Governor
raised
Haley,
taxes when
Governor
she was in
DeSantis has
South
the floor.
Carolina. That's on the record. And she even proposed a tax on groceries at one point. But I'm just thinking, have you seen your grocery bill lately? That's one of the things that's hitting working people the most, that groceries are going up probably twice as much what you do. But I also think it's important that we lift people up. So in Florida, we eliminated all sales tax on every baby item. Diapers, wipes, strollers, cribs. We want families to be able to prosper in this country. One of the things that's causing so much problem is the breakdown in the American family. We've done a lot in Florida to be able to rejuvenate that, but we need to make it easier for people to raise children in this country so that we can have strong families in a strong country.
Governor DeSantis, at a CNN town hall
True.
last week, you said you support a flat tax, which is a single income tax rate for every American. Under your plan, would working families pay the same tax rate as billionaires?
I would only do it if people are better off than they are now. I mean, I want people paying less taxes. Actually, if you think the last year we have numbers for, the federal government took in the highest percentage of taxes from the economy since World War II, and yet they're going deep into debt.
the
We have
Ted
a
Cruz
spending
platform.
problem in this country. It's not a tax problem in this
I don't
country.
disagree. I
And
just
if you had
noticed the
something that was
similarities.
simple and transparent, not only would that be better for economic growth, it's also better to end the weaponization of government. The IRS has been weaponized against conservatives going back to the Obama administration. I was there for that. No one's been held accountable for doing that. You look at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Justice. The weaponization of federal power ends the day I become the president of the United States. There's going to be a new sheriff in town. We're going to restore the constitutional accountability that our founding fathers envisioned when they formatted the Constitution. And, you know, I've talked to folks who have overbearing federal agencies. I mean, you have farmers who have the EPA coming on their farmland because there's maybe a puddle there, waters of the United States. Give me a break. So we're going to reduce the size of government, but we're also going to reduce the scope of government. And in Florida, I've actually delivered on this. Florida has the lowest percentage of state government workers per capita in the country, and the cost of our state government employees is the lowest in the country. No wonder why we're paying down debt while we're cutting taxes for people. That's the way you do it.
Governor DeSantis, 15-second point of clarification. The question was whether or not working families would pay the same amount.
They would pay less than
billionaires.
what they're paying now. The way I view it is, okay, you'd exempt people, so you would pay no tax for working class people. It would only be as you get above, because I think the first 40, 50 grand, that's just to subsist. And even some places you can't even do that. So you would have no tax up to a certain point, and then it would just be a single rate. So if somebody makes $100,000, they pay a certain amount. If someone makes $200,000, they make twice as much, and they pay twice as much.
Governor Haley, your
I mean,
response?
first of all, you just can't trust what he says. I mean, that's the biggest thing. We don't have a grocery
can trust
in
you?
South Carolina, and I never once raised taxes, period. But what I will tell you is it is to call into question, why did he promise he'd never raise the debt limit, and he turned around and he raised it? And then you want to go and you see one side of what he says early on, and then he changes it. So here he goes and he says that he is all for energy independence. He wants to get the EPA out of the way. Well, why did he run on the fact that he wanted to ban fracking and ban offshore drilling? Why did he go and author that legislation to eliminate the renewable fuel standard that matters so much? And why now is he suddenly coming to Iowa and saying, oh, never mind, I don't mean all of that? Why did he call Trump and say that he wanted him to stop drilling 9 miles into federal waters? Why is he now saying this? Why do you come to the people of Iowa and say one thing when you campaigned and on day 2 of your office, you banned fracking, you banned offshore drilling, you turned
in the
around
Everglades
and authored
how
and
dare
led
he.
the charge on banning the renewable fuel standard?
Yeah.
You've got to stand up for those things
You've been beating that dead horse. That's been
because
debunked
it's
multiple
true,
times.
Ron, it's true.
We're looking forward to be able to open up energy for production, and definitely here in the Midwest with biofuels. I'm the only one that checked all the boxes from the Iowa Renewable Fuel Standard, because I've actually visited all 99 counties. I've actually shown up to people's farms. I've sat and I've listened to people about what they're going through, how their economy is structured, and how it's important that we're producing energy here in the United States. I never want to go hat in hand like Biden has done to Venezuela or Saudi and begging for energy. We're going to be able to open up production. We're going to choose Midland over Moscow. We're going to choose the Marcellus Shale over the Mullahs, and we're going to choose the Bakken over Beijing. Energy independence it's good for consumers. It's good to reduce inflation. And it's one of the best things we can do for our national security. So we'll do that on day 1, and we are going to reverse Biden's Green New Deal and the electric vehicle mandates. Will save the American automobile.
Thank you, Governor. This has been one of the biggest years for illegal border crossings into the United States. Last month alone, 225,000 migrants illegally crossed
we
the
need
southern
Vivek
border.
here.
It's a record high, overwhelming
not
the
the
Border Patrol
same.
resources that are already stretched thin. Mayors across the country say their cities are being pushed to a
Ron's
breaking
making
point.
some good points,
Governor
but
DeSantis, former President Trump,
Vivek would
famously
bully
promised
her.
to build a wall on the southern
Rightfully.
border. He obviously did not get that done. You have promised to finish the job. How will you succeed where he failed?
We will build a wall. We will actually have Mexico pay for it in the way that I thought Donald Trump was. We're going to charge fees on remittances that workers send to foreign countries, billions of dollars. We'll build the wall. He also promised record deportations. Donald Trump deported fewer people than Barack Obama did when he was president. Biden's let in 8 million people just in 4 years. They all have to go back. We have to enforce the rule of law in this country. Think about what's happening to our country. Just this week, we saw the news that a school in Brooklyn, New York, had the kids stay home. They were not able to go to school, told you can't go get an in-person education.
Yeah, that
Why?
was crazy. Real
because
story.
The city's commandeering the school to house illegal aliens in it. Talk about putting Americans last. You're putting these kids out of an education because you can't control the border. Biden has failed in this endeavor. He has not taken care that the laws of this country be faithfully executed. Do not trust Nikki Haley with illegal immigration. That's like having the fox guard the hen house. She's on tape at the Aspen Institute. She'll say she didn't say it. She was chastising conservatives, saying it's disrespectful to illegal aliens to say that they're criminals. They're violating the law. It's disrespectful when people come to this country illegally and impose burdens on our communities and run drugs into this country. That's what's disrespectful. She's weak on immigration. She's bankrolled by people who want open borders. And she said there shouldn't be a limit on immigration. You should work with corporate CEOs.
Thanks, Governor.
That is pale pastels. That
Governor,
is warmed
thank
over
you so much. So,
corporatism.
Governor Haley, Governor DeSantis and also Donald Trump are attacking you for that comment in 2015 in which you said undocumented immigrants should not be called, quote, criminals. At the time, the full context is you said, quote, we don't need to talk about them as criminals. They're not. They're families that want a better life and they're desperate to get here, unquote. Do you still feel that way?
I saw them. When I was at the United Nations, I saw them. That doesn't mean we should let them into our country. I mean, first of all, I will tell you that when I was governor of South Carolina, we passed the toughest illegal immigration law in the country. Obama sued us over it, and we won. We fought Obama on illegal immigration. We fought Obama on migrant kids. We fought Obama on Syrian refugees. We fought Obama on Guantanamo Bay
And then you sold out.
prisoners. I have always said we are a country of laws. The second we stop being a country of laws, we give up everything this country was founded on. But I will
Then why
tell
don't you call them criminals?
Passing that toughest illegal immigration law in the country, we passed E-Verify, which I want to take national, which is where businesses have to prove that the people they hire are in this country legally. I passed it within 6 months of being governor. Ron didn't pass it for 5 years. He only waited to pass it when he decided to run for president. What we need to do is not just ban a wall. We need to put 25,000 Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. We need to defund sanctuary cities once and for all. No more safe havens for illegal immigrants. We need to make sure we go back to the Remain in Mexico policy so that no one even steps foot on U.S. soil. And instead of catch and release, we need to go to catch and deport. That's the only way we'll stop the incentives of these illegal immigrants coming across. Biden turned around and gave 500,000 Venezuelans temporary protective status. That's 500,000 driver's licenses, 500,000 social security numbers. All that does is incentivize them to pick up the phone, call their family members, and tell them to come
Governor
ahead.
DeSantis.
She did bring, when she was governor, she did bring Syrian refugees, and she got criticized for that.
That is not
she
true.
also, in her
DeSantis
comment,
lies.
Hold on one second, Governor.
That is not true.
We'll give you your turn in a second. Governor
What do you mean?
DeSantis.
It's noted.
I thought there were better people looking for a better life.
The disrespect comment, she's talking about that they're all families. If you look right now at the border, these are military-age males, many of them. And they're coming from all across this world, not just from Central America. In fact, you've got them from China, Iran, Russia, the Middle East. When I was down there a couple years ago, because I've sent people down there, you had people from Libya and Haiti. This is a ticking time bomb for this country. There are, of course, going to be terrorist cells that have come in. It's like the lowest cost way to be able to harm this country. Just send people across the southern border. Nikki Haley also opposed the border wall in 2016. She said that she ridiculed it when Donald Trump was president. I'm telling you, you need a wall. You can't trust politicians to do this. If the wall's there, it's a physical fact of life, and it's a huge step to restoring this country's sovereignty.
Governor Haley.
Go to DeSantisLies.com. I said you can't just build a wall. You have to do more than build a wall. It was having the wall and everything else. You can't trust what Ron's saying. But this is a bigger issue.
Oh, yeah,
this
Nikki's
is
so
more than
tough
him
on
just
immigration,
constantly
right?
being
So tough.
desperate and throwing things on me. This is the fact that we have to realize my parents came here legally. They came the right way 50 years ago. They put in the time, they put in the price. They are offended by what's
And then
happening
they made
on the
you
border. And my mom would always say, if they
pissed.
don't follow the laws to come into this country, they won't follow the laws when they are in this country. And we have to start treating this
You said they're
like
not
it is.
criminals.
This is putting harm on our schools, on our hospitals. Taxpayers are paying for it. You see these mayors are
You
now
said
upset
they're
about
not
it.
criminals.
The only reason
Oh my
Eric
God.
Adams is now upset, why? He
Oh,
shouldn't
this
be
woman
a
pisses me
sanctuary
off.
city then. That's why we have to defund sanctuary cities. Now Governor Abbott finally did to them what's been happening to Texas for so long. We've got to put an end to this. It's dangerous, and it doesn't even count the fentanyl that's
Governor
coming
DeSantis.
Unbelievable.
There are more than 10 million undocumented immigrants already living in the United States, according to Pew Research. Will any of them be allowed to stay in the United States under your administration?
The number of people that will be amnestied when I'm president is 0. We cannot do an amnesty in this country. First of all,
Good
it's
for
going
him.
to do is cause more
Good for him.
people to want to come illegally. So you got to enforce the law. It's got to be consistent. People got to know it's there. You also have to remove benefits for people who are here illegally. You know, California, you can go illegal alien and you get free health insurance coverage. You're here illegally and they're doing that. We should not let states provide these benefits. You know, in Florida, obviously, we don't do that. We don't allow the driver's license and all that. But some states do, and it creates a magnet for people coming in. So federally, no benefits, no enticements to come in. And then the states, we're going to crack down on sanctuary states and sanctuary cities. And I showed the hypocrisy of all this back in 2022, because we have a program to transport illegal aliens to sanctuary jurisdictions. And one of the places we sent 50 to, beautiful, liberal Martha's Vineyard. And you know what? These are folks that were on their high horse, saying how they were
should have been
sanctuary
deported,
jurisdiction, saying nobody's illegal, all refugees are welcome. That's what they had in their town. The minute even 50 came up, they called a state of emergency and deported them off the island the next day. How do you think Texas feels? How do you think all these other communities feel that are being overwhelmed? So we cannot have liberal elites in this country imposing policies on the rest of us that they are not willing to deal with the consequences of themselves.
Governor Haley, when you're president, will any of the more than 10 million undocumented immigrants in the U.S. be allowed to stay in the country?
I'll read your super chats through the commercial.
You have to deport them. And the reason you have to deport them is they're cutting the line. You've got people who have done this
Oh,
and
really?
tried
Now
to go
you
through
say
the
that?
right way. You can't have them go and jump the line and suddenly do that. And that is actually what will get them to stop coming, is when they do realize they get to the wall and they have to turn around and go back. It's a dangerous process of what happens for them to try and migrate here. But when I was at the United Nations and we had this, which is another reason why we need to have Trump here defending himself and talking about what he would do going in the future, because it's a problem. I was on the ground in Honduras and Guatemala. And what we saw is a lot of the reason why they were coming from there is because of gangs and drugs. And so what we did was we had our military go and train them on how to deal with gangs. We went and put drug boats on the water to keep the drugs from coming. But we said, you have to have them processed from here. You can't have them come. We were able to stop that flow. We've got to go back to do that. But we need to end it once and for all. Donald Trump didn't do that. That's why he needs to be here debating on the stage right now.
Governor, thank you. Let's turn to foreign policy. You have expressed different
You had nothing to do with any of that, so I don't know why you're taking credit.
Approach the international conflicts, and I want to start with Ukraine. It's been nearly 2 years since Russia invaded Ukraine, and there is still no end in sight to that war. Governor Haley, you say that this is a, quote, war about freedom that Ukraine must win. Governor DeSantis says, quote, we need to bring this war to an end. Do you believe he shares your commitment to a Ukrainian victory?
Nobody knows what he believes, because when President Obama was in office, he supported foreign aid to Ukraine. Now he's copying Trump and trying to act like he doesn't want to support Ukraine. But let me tell you why Ukraine should matter. First of all, I don't think we should give cash to any country, friend or foe, because you can't follow it, you can't hold it accountable.
Really,
I don't
Nikki?
think we need to put troops on the ground, and Ukrainians want to win this themselves. But dictators always do what they say they're going to do. China said they were going to take Hong Kong. They did. Russia said they were going to invade Ukraine. We watched it. China says Taiwan is next. We better believe them. Russia said once they take Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries, and that puts America at war. This is about preventing war. It's always been about preventing war. If we support Ukraine, that's only 3.5% of our defense budget. Biden and no one else is telling the American people the truth about that. The Europeans have put in more than that, and they should. It's their neighborhood. But this is a pro-American, freedom-loving country.
I don't know if that's true.
And we better remember that you have to be a friend to get a friend. And we needed a lot of friends September 12th. We've got to make sure that we're having the backs of the right friends. Because if Russia wins, China wins. There's a reason the Taiwanese want us to help the Ukrainians. And that's because they know if Ukraine wins, China won't invade Taiwan. This is about preventing war.
Governor DeSantis.
Keeping the war going is not going to help them win.
I supported Trump's policy vis-a-vis Russia, Ukraine, and it was successful. The Biden policy has not been, but Nikki Haley is basically a carbon copy of what Biden is. It's an open-ended commitment. They want another $108 billion.
Yeah.
They will not tell you when they have achieved their goal, and this is going to go on maybe hundreds of billions more into the future. I think a lot of people have died. We need to find a way to end this, because our priorities for national security, of course, the border, which we talked about, and people like Nikki Haley care more about Ukraine's border than she does about our own southern border, which is wrong. But we also have to look at what's the top threat to this country. It's the Chinese Communist Party. We are not doing what we need to do to have adequate hard power in the Indo-Pacific. And here's the thing. We don't have enough resources, being $35 trillion in debt, to continue doing hundreds of billions of dollars. We got to focus on our issues here at home, and we've got to deal with the top threat that we face, which is China.
And then I wonder why you raised the debt when you were in Congress, because we're all paying for that. What I will tell you is this is the lie they're telling the American people over and over again. It is so wrong to say this. They're saying you have to choose between Ukraine or Israel and securing the border. Supporting Ukraine
clearly only one thing is happening.
3.5% of our budget. I don't want cash going. It's equipment and it's ammunition. If we support Ukraine and Israel, that's only 5% of our defense budget.
So you're going to borrow that?
if we support Ukraine, Israel, and secure the border, that's less than 20% of Biden's green subsidies. You do not have to choose when it comes to national security. This is about keeping Americans safe. This is about preventing war. This is about keeping our military men and women from having to fight a war. And you only do that when you focus on national security, not telling lies to the American people that they have to choose. That is wrong. That's never been the case.
So here's the problem with what she's saying.
It is the case, though.
She doesn't articulate how this comes to an end, except
True.
she was asked
Exactly.
after the last debate by, I believe, Megyn Kelly, and she said, you bring it to an end by bringing Ukraine into NATO. But of course, we're a NATO country, so if you bring Ukraine into NATO, that puts the United States at war. Megyn said that to her, and then she basically gave a word salad as to how you go from there. So they have sent cash. She supports this $106 billion that they're trying to get through Congress. Where's some of that money going? They've done tens of billions of dollars to pay salaries for Ukrainian government bureaucrats. They've paid pensions for Ukrainian retirees with your tax dollars. We've got homeless veterans. We have all these problems. This is the UN way of thinking, that we're somehow globalists and we have unlimited resources to do. You know, I think here's the problem.
I'm pleasantly surprised with
this. You
this.
can take the ambassador out of the United Nations, but you can't take the United Nations out of the ambassador.
Because Ron's been very squishy on foreign policy, and he's finally taken a stand.
I have
and
never said that we should give salaries or benefits
good for him.
or anything else to Ukrainians. I have said it again, Ron, so stop lying.
But you supported the aid
Governor
packages.
DeSantis, you has the floor.
So you go, I did not support the aid package. I support equipment and ammunition going to Ukraine. I think it is incredibly important that we're honest and say we have to focus on national security. Don't go and lie to the American people to make them think we can't do this. You turn around and raise the debt limit. You're the one that's talked about, look at what you did to Florida, but think about the fact that he's talking about where's this money going to come from. The best way to tell about a candidate is to see how they've run their campaign. He has blown through $150 million. I don't even know how you do that. Through his campaign, he has nothing to show for it. He spent more money on private planes than he has on commercials trying to get Iowans to vote for him. If you can't manage a campaign, how are you going to manage a country? Which is exactly what...
Well, listen, I'm proud that in the state of Florida, we're ranked #1 for economy of all 50 states by CNBC, #1 for education.
Cost of living.
She was ranked number 50 in education when she was governor of California. And of course, she wasn't able to do school choice. She didn't deliver big tax cuts. We're also #1 for net in-migration, #1 for GDP growth amongst large states, #1 for talent development, #1 for new business formations, and on it goes. So the success we've had in Florida, I can cite the statistics. It's important. But just look how people are voting with their feet. They're leaving California. They're leaving Illinois, New York, all these states, and they're coming to Florida in record numbers because we're doing it right. And not only have I cut taxes big time, where she didn't, and governor of South Carolina,
put a little
we've
GIF
paid
on the
down
screen.
25% of our state's debt. That's how you manage the third largest state in this country. Just imagine if we could do that for the United States of America.
That's me watching the debate.
Let's stay on foreign policy.
Okay, that's me right now.
To the Israel-Hamas war, you both have said that you unequivocally support Israel. You both have called for the complete elimination of Hamas. Governor DeSantis, there are real disagreements within Israel about how to handle what happens in Gaza after the war against Hamas is over. Some Israeli cabinet officials are pushing for the mass removal of Palestinians from Gaza. Governor Haley told CNN last week she does not support that. Do you?
So we got to support Israel in word and in deed, in public and in private. And they need to be able to finish the job. Joe Biden is kneecapping him. He'll say one thing, then he goes, and his base doesn't like Israel, so he's got to do all these other things. This is a time to recognize that they suffered the most deaths of Jews, murder of Jews, since the Holocaust. Hamas wants a second Holocaust. They want to annihilate the state of Israel. So I think to be a good ally,
so we fund them, but not Ukraine,
them in the decisions that they're making with respect to Gaza. Look, there's a lot of pluses and minuses with how you're doing this, but for us to be sitting in Washington, second-guessing them, I don't think that's the right way. We also have a disagreement, Governor Haley
we're giving them money.
When she was at the UN, she supported the idea of a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinian Arabs. The problem with that is the Palestinian Arabs don't recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. So doing a two-state solution doesn't create something that's going to lead to a lasting peace. It creates a stepping stone for Israel's destruction. So under no circumstances, as president, am I going to pressure Israel to risk their security to do a so-called two-state solution. She was wrong when she embraced that, and we're right to say we trust Israel to make these decisions. They're a good ally of ours. We should trust their judgment on these sensitive issues.
Governor DeSantis, 15 seconds. 15-second clarification. Do you support the mass removal of Palestinians from Gaza?
So as president, I am not going to tell them to do that. I think there's a lot of issues with that. But if they make the calculation that to avert a second Holocaust, they need to do that. I think some of these Palestinian Arabs, Saudi Arabia should take some. Egypt should take some. They've never been willing to accept any of these folks in their own neighborhood.
Thank you, Governor. Governor Haley.
Well, first of all, we need to understand that the reason we need to support Israel is Israel's a bright spot in a tough neighborhood. They are the tip of the spear when it comes to defeating terrorism. It has never been that Israel needs America.
Here she goes again.
It has always been that America needs Israel.
Not true.
When I was at the United Nations, I fought every day for Israel. And if you would have listened to what I said at the United Nations, a two-state solution wasn't something that was possible because Israel would always come to the table and the Palestinians wouldn't. But right now, we have to make sure that Israel has the support that it needs. There should be three things. Give Israel whatever it wants to get the job done. 2, eliminate Hamas once and for all. And 3, do whatever it takes to bring the hostages home. But it's really rich that Ron is going to act like he suddenly cares for Israel when he brought the person to Iowa that's the most anti-Israel Republican in the state, the person that went and voted against Israel's right to exist in Congress, the person that voted with the squad against anti-Semitism on college campuses.
Thank you, Governor.
And you brought that person to Iowa to go and campaign with you.
The Thomas Massey slander.
She's obviously referring to Congressman Tom Massey from Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, that's just cheap garbage. But here's the thing: when the attacks happened against Israel, I knew it was going to be a big deal for Florida. We have one of the largest Israeli American populations in the country, and we've been a haven for Orthodox Jews in particular since I've been governor. And you know what? Biden wasn't helping Americans get out of the war zone. These are people that were stranded. So I did an executive order. We scrambled planes, and we rescued over 700 Americans from Israel and brought them back safely to the state of Florida. You got to step up and you got to lead when things like this are happening. We also have gone after the anti-Semitism on our campuses. We did that early in my administration. You didn't see our college presidents doing some of the things that you've seen. I just announced in the State of the State address yesterday or 2 days ago that we are going to say, and not just for Jewish students, anyone who's having religious being persecuted or being marginalized because of their faith in any college around the country, we're going to waive the transfer requirement so that people can come to Florida and be safe. What they are doing to these Jewish students has been reprehensible, and we're not going to let it happen.
So there are
sounds kind of like affirmative action, but okay.
There are growing fears of this war escalating into a broader regional conflict.
Waiving the requirements.
Governor Haley, just yesterday, the U.S. Navy shot down 21 missiles and drones fired by Iranian-backed militants in the Red Sea. Iranian-backed militants are now also attacking U.S. and Western interests in Syria and Iraq. Your fellow South Carolinian Republican Senator Lindsey Graham is calling for the U.S. to conduct retaliatory strikes inside Iran.
Yeah, he's a lunatic.
Would you order strikes inside Iran?
Well, first of all, notice Ron didn't say anything about the fact that he did bring that most anti-Israel Republican into this state to campaign.
Oh my
he
gosh,
also hasn't told you that the only Republican Jewish state legislator left his campaign because he wasn't dealing with the neo-Nazi marches and wasn't dealing with anti-Semitism properly.
What?
When it comes to Iran, what we have to understand, there would be no Hamas without Iran. There would not be Houthis without Iran. There wouldn't be Hezbollah without Iran. And when you look at the strikes that are happening in Iraq and Syria, that is because of Iran. They're pulling the puppet strings. What we need to do is the idea that we've had over 130 strikes on our men and women in Iraq and Syria
Here we
is
go. She wants war.
unconscionable. We're supposed to have their backs. And Biden has been slow. He's been hiding in a corner, and he hasn't dealt with it. We need to go and take out every bit of the production that they have that's allowing them to do those strikes. It's hugely important that we do that. And you can't do that if you have a Secretary of Defense that is in ICU and the president doesn't even know about it. What bothers me is how does Biden not talk to his Secretary of Defense every single day, knowing that we have a war in Europe, a war in the Middle East, that we have our American military with strikes going on them. We've got brain injuries. My husband is deployed right now. As a military spouse, the idea that the Secretary of Defense would not even be in contact with the president, much less in contact with his staff, is unforgivable.
Governor DeSantis.
She really sent her husband to the Middle East.
After the attacks
What a
against
great wife.
Israel, anyone with half a brain knows Iran is behind this. They fund Hamas. They fund Hezbollah. We did a special session in the legislature down in Florida. We expanded sanctions against Iran. If we were our own country, we'd be
No
the
answer to the
14th
question, by
largest
the way.
economy in the world. The root of this is Biden came into office and he relaxed the sanctions on Iran.
Would you strike
They've had
Iran or
massive
not?
amounts of money flooding into their country, just like under the Obama administration. They take that money and they use it to fund jihad around the world. I'm the only one running for president that served in the armed forces. I deployed to Iraq back in 2007, 2008. So I understand what our military goes through. I would never put our troops in harm's way like Biden is doing in the Middle East without defending them with everything they got. If you harm a hair on the head of one of our service members, you are going to have hell to pay. He's leaving them out to dry, and I think it's disgraceful for a commander-in-chief to do that.
Thank you, Governor. The CNN Republican presidential debate live from Des Moines, Iowa. We'll be right back after this. Go to CNN.com.
All right, finally.
for real-time debate analysis. Stay with us.
We have a commercial break. All right, so we're currently in commercial break. I'm trying to see if I can put even the commercial break screens off the screen. Okay, anyways, while we sit around and wait, couple of takeaways. First of all, this is, I think, the biggest thing that is glaring to me. Nikki Haley trying to do this whole line of, like, Ron DeSantis lies. The guy never tells the truth. Yeah, that's a little bit ironic and not super convincing when you, Nikki, are one of the biggest shapeshifters, chameleons, and liars in American politics. It's like, you know, it's very common for politicians to throw that line at each other. But frankly, even when I think of Ron DeSantis and his shortcomings, even then, like, being a liar is not necessarily at the top of that list. Like, I don't even think it's a stereotype that fits him that well to begin with. But especially if you're going to be pushing that as being Nikki Nimrata Haley, the same person who claims you never said Hillary Clinton was an inspiration, who you're now saying you never said illegal immigrants aren't criminals, like these things are directly on the tape. Yeah, that's not super convincing. At the same time, I think that, you know, the reason I say we need Vivek here is because Ron is getting some shots in. It's almost like a boxing match, right? Ron is landing some blows, but he's not, like, going in the way I think Ramaswamy was, and that's frankly why this thing's kind of boring in many regards. All right, let me get to the super chats because I don't want to miss those before we go on to the next portion of this debate. So let's look at those. If Streamlabs decides it wants to work. Hello? Okay, let me just read them. All right, I need stream. Okay, where did we leave off here? Okay, dollar for $5 says Vivek is a vegetarian. Do you think he would pass anti-meat bills if he was president? Also, thoughts on Garrett Nussmeier and Bama's future? The answer is no. I don't think Vivek is going to do anything about anti-meat laws. I don't buy that. However, I do find it a little disqualifying, I have to say, that the guy is a vegetarian. Okay? I just found that out recently, and I was like, come on, dude. I thought you were based. What's going on here? You know? But no. And then my thoughts on Garrett Nussmeier. I saw him in the bowl game. To tell you the truth, I'm not super impressed by him. I don't see the hype. I mean, he's a decent game manager, but I don't know if I buy the big-time hype about him. As for Alabama's future, I don't know. I think it's going to be Kiffin or Dan Lanning, more likely. But thank you for the $5. Dollar for $2 says he needs to be there to defend his record. That is cope. That is indeed cope. You know, these debates basically are kind of irrelevant entertainment shows because none of you are polling anywhere close to Trump. So, you know, get better, I suppose. Horizon Bear for $5.50 says Mickey DeSantis. I assume that's some type of Disney Florida reference. Thank you for the 550. Horizons Bear, I appreciate it. And Dollar for 5 says, has Vivek's participation helped Nikki in the polls? I feel like it has, because nobody cares about her when she's not getting attacked by Vivek. That is actually very true. All right, it's not Vivek's fault, but I think there's a valid point to be made there, which is when you gain attention, naturally you're always going to have, even if to the majority of people you're a laughingstock, you're always going to have someone, if you have a large enough audience, who says, I think I agree with that person. And then you gain fans, right? This is true of a lot of influencers. You know, think about like the Lil Tays or the Jake Paul, Logan Pauls of back in the day, right? They rose as being these people who were constantly made fun of and, you know, kind of not taken seriously. But because they had such a wide audience, they still gained something of a fan base. And then eventually years later, look at the platform that people like that have, right? So this principle, I think, is also true of politics. Even if you're a provocateur, even if you're someone who's constantly an antagonist, if you gain a lot of attention, you can do something with that. So I think that is true. Not Vivek's fault, but I think that's true. Okay, we're back live again here, folks. So I will shut up. Thank you for the super chats. Feel free to do so. And I'll shut up.
Question in the Republican Party right now, and that is, what is the role of government, and should it use its power to go after businesses and private entities that take actions that don't align with conservative values? Governor DeSantis, you used your powers in Florida to take on Disney after the company criticized an education bill that you signed into law. How does that square with the traditional conservative view that small, limited government is best?
The proper role of government, if it means anything, it's to protect our kids. And I've stood for the innocence of our kids. It is wrong. It is wrong to sexualize the curriculum. It's wrong. And look, my wife and I, we've got a first grader, a kindergartner, and a preschooler. This is something that's important to us personally. It's wrong to tell a kindergartner, like Disney wanted to do, that you can change your gender, or tell a third grader that you're born in the wrong body. So I stood up against, the media didn't like it, the left didn't like it, and Disney didn't like it, and they're the 800-pound gorilla in the state of Florida. Most people, most corporate Republicans would have caved. I stood and I fought for the kids. We took on Disney, and we defeated that, and we won that fight, and our kids are better off. Now, Nikki Haley sided with Disney. She invited them to South Carolina, even though they were involved in transing kids. That is not what we need to do. But I think that's similar. She is representative of this corporatist element of the party. For example, she supported $900 million in subsidies to Boeing when she was in South Carolina. And then when she got out of office, she took a seat on their board, and she made millions of dollars. Then she gave speeches, paid speeches to a lot of Wall Street interests, didn't publish what she said. We don't know what she promised them. And she made millions of dollars doing that. Now they're the ones that are funding her campaign. So we need to stand up for the people and not bow down to woke corporations. And we know Nikki Haley will cave to the woke mob every single time.
Governor Haley, a response?
Government was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. It was never meant to be all things to all people. And what we don't need is government politicizing anything. The first thing I'll say is, again, DeSantisLies.com, because I have never said anything related to the transgender stuff he says.
I wonder what's actually on that website.
Kids.
Let's see.
I've always said that boys need to go into boys' bathrooms, girls need to go into girls' bathrooms, that we shouldn't have any gender transitions before the age of 18. Just like we don't have tattoos before the age of 18, we shouldn't have gender transformation or puberty blockers. But I will tell you that it's really interesting that Ron talks about this Disney, because Disney has been woke for a long time. They were against the immigration situation that Trump was doing. They were against the Paris Climate Agreement when I did it. They were against
and you
the
invited them
bill
to
in
your
Georgia.
state.
Ron didn't have any problem with that. As a matter of fact, he gave them the largest corporate subsidies in Florida history. He had a tech exemptions that he didn't give any tech exemptions to anybody but Disney. Yet when they went and criticized him, he got thin-skinned and suddenly started to fight back. We don't need
That's actually kind of based. That's actually kind of based. I respect DeSantis for that.
We are not woke in South Carolina. I will always invite businesses to come to South Carolina.
Based.
But the one thing you don't do is government doesn't bully our businesses, and that can't happen. And Ron is determined. Anybody that offends him, he goes after them.
Why not? Disney is like its own government in the state of Florida.
She just said she's always fought to protect kids, but when she was governor of South Carolina, they had a bill to protect girls from men going into the bathroom. She killed it, and she's bragged about it for years that happened. She didn't stand up and fight the kids. She caved to the Chamber of Commerce and the corporation. She said she's against the surgeries for minors. That wasn't what she said this summer. She was asked about it. It's on video, and she said the law should stay out of it. I criticized her in the last debate. She took a lot of heat. So then she's flipped and said that there now should be the law involved. She said she supports a federal law. I'm glad she's come to the right thing.
This website sucks. It
goes back to that young kid in the town hall that she had, where he said, Nikki Haley, you are the new John Kerry. You're for it before you are against it.
It's a shame that we had to put up DeSantisLies.com. Honestly, if he would spend as much time trying to prove why he
I'm on the website right now. It's garbage.
He would be doing a lot better in the polls. The reason that he spent and blown through $150 million and gone down in the polls is because he spent more time trying to lie about me than he is about telling the truth about himself.
So you didn't kill the bathroom bill.
I have never said that we should have any gender operations or surgeries. You're lying about that.
Governor Haley has the floor.
When it comes to the bathroom bill, I will say, first of all, that was 10 years ago. We had a handful of kids that may have had that issue. And what I made very clear at that time in the state is girls go into girls' bathrooms, boys go into boys' bathrooms. And if there are any other exceptions, they use a private bathroom. I have fought for women's sports and making sure that biological boys are not women's sports, and I'll continue to do that. I have always said we have to raise strong girls. Strong girls become strong women become strong leaders. None of that happens if we have biological boys.
Governor Haley, according to the U.S. Department of Education, in 2017, the year you left office, South Carolina schools ranked in the bottom 10 nationwide in both reading and math scores. Given that, why should voters concerned about K-12 education support you rather than other Republicans?
Because I think what we did was we knew that there was an issue. We knew in South Carolina if a child couldn't read by third grade, they were 4 times less likely to graduate high school. So what we did is we started holding kids back instead of pushing them forward. We brought in their parents. We did reading remediation, and we set them up for success. We've got to do that all over our country. We only have 31% of 8th graders in our country are proficient in reading. 27% of 8th graders are proficient in math. We
you
don't
had like
do
the worst education stats as governor.
10 years from now. That's why I want to take as many federal programs from D.C. as we can and send them down to the state level. Think education. We can move a lot of K-12 programs down to the state level, reduce the strings that are attached, and that way states can handle it themselves. People in Iowa know best what types of education they need. Secondly, parents should decide what types of education their children get, what mode of education. And we should have complete transparency in the classroom. No parent should ever wonder what's being said or taught to their child in the classroom. That's why we'll have all of the curriculums online for every parent to see. And we need to start putting vocational classes back in our high schools. Let's teach our kids how to do things. We did that in South Carolina. We had apprenticeships. We taught our kids how to build the things we're making. When we start putting education back in the states and away from D.C., that's when we'll start to see that we're going back to the basics. We're doing what parents want, and we're doing what the industries in that state need.
Thank you, Governor DeSantis. I'm coming to you right now. Governor DeSantis, you have supported limits on what subjects can be taught and how, including American history, in Florida schools. You have also made it easier to remove books from public school libraries. You say you want to, quote, make America Florida. Do you want to implement those Florida school policies nationwide?
I'll get to that in a sec. So Nikki Haley said she wants parents to decide on the education. She campaigned for governor saying she was going to do school choice, to be able to give private scholarships, particularly to low-income families. And she was governor and never did it. She caved to the teachers union. I delivered the biggest school choice expansion in the history of the United States. We beat the teachers union. We've even done paycheck protection so that teachers aren't forced to do dues, and now they're choosing other things. So we've done it right in Florida, and the results speak for themselves. We have one of the top performing 4th grade reading and math in the country. And if you just took our charter school population, 365,000 kids, disproportionately low income, racial ethnic minorities, if they were their own state, they'd be in the top 5 in performance. Everyone can succeed, but you got to have a leader who's going to fight the teachers' unions and is going to deliver school choice. Governor Kim Reynolds did that here in Iowa, who's endorsed me. Nikki Haley did not. She failed. And if she can't do it in the reddest state in the country of South Carolina, how are you going to be able to succeed in Washington, D.C.? Now, in terms of what we've done, we believe in empowering parents, and there's certain standards about what's age and developmentally appropriate. It's wrong to have pornographic materials in 4th or 5th grade. And you know what's happened? They'll go to school board meetings all around the country. They'll start reading it, and they say, oh, no, it's too graphic. You can't read it here. You can't put it on the 6 o'clock news. Well, if it's not appropriate in a school board meeting and you can't put it on the 6 o'clock news, why are you jamming it down the throats of a 4th grader?
So, Governor, just a point of clarification. Do you want to implement Florida's education policies nationwide?
It depends on the policy. School choice, universal, yes. I don't want a nationalized curriculum. I think that that's a bottom-up thing. I want to get rid of the Federal Department of Education, get that weight off the backs of the state and local governments. But we are going to do nationwide scholarships through the corporate tax credits, and that's going to bail out a lot of poor kids throughout this country.
Governor Haley?
You know, I have fought for school choice in my entire career because I think parents know their children best, and I think we should always do that. That's why we passed charter school legislation in our state. That's why we empowered homeschoolers in our state. That's why we changed the funding formula so we lifted up challenged areas without bringing down the wealthy areas. We wanted school choice. I had a Republican legislature that wouldn't do it, but we pushed hard to get that done. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it across the country, but what we have to do is we have to make it state-centric. We've got to get these programs down to the state level. We've got to let the focus be on teachers. Teachers right now have to be the guidance counselors, the pastors, the nurses, and everything in between. And oh, by the way, they have to teach to a test. That's not what teachers want. Teachers want to do what they were taught to do. And that means math, science, reading, history, English, arts. That's it. Schools can't
I'm checking
be
in
all
on the other
things to
town
all
halls
kids.
right
They
now.
need to
If you
let
wonder
the
why I'm
parents
quiet.
parent. They need to let teachers teach. And we need to go back to the
Thank
basics
you.
in education so we get our
Thank
kids
you.
ready.
I want to
That's the
move on.
problem, though. That word salad is the problem.
Governor
She
DeSantis.
says she's
True.
always supported school choice, and she failed to deliver. She blames other people. Leadership is about
Kids, they
getting
need to
things done. Stop making excuses. Make it happen.
True.
If leadership's about getting things done, how did you blow through $150 million in your campaign and you were
Girl
down in the
math,
polls?
Nikki.
You
Here's-
are
I think
not
it's
a
called
manager.
girl
No,
math.
but now I'm going
I
to
think
say,
it's very instructive
no,
about
if
what
he's
how
gonna do
Nikki
this-
Haley sees the world.
I think I have the floor.
Political
Governor
advertisements
DeSantis,
as like that's as important
Governor
as the
DeSantis,
kids and
Governor
their
Haley has the
education.
floor.
What is more important here? She's saying
Governor
somehow
DeSantis,
that's
it's
not
Governor
as important.
Haley's. It's Governor Haley's time. Go ahead.
I think I hit a nerve. What I will tell you is, look, if you can't manage a campaign, it's been a revolving door of political people in and out of his campaign. You've heard of campaign people going to blows with each other because they can't all agree. $150 million, and he spent more on private planes than commercials. I flew commercial. I stayed in residence inns. We went and saved our money. We made sure we spent it right because you have to understand it's not your money, it's other people's money, and you have to know how to handle it. If he can't handle the financial parts of a campaign, how's he going to handle the economy when it comes to the White House? And he goes and he has been demeaning me over and over again, telling lies, DeSantisLies.com, because he thinks it makes him
she
look
said
bigger.
it again.
But in the one basic thing, you've campaiged for president in one state, you're invisible in New Hampshire, you're invisible in South Carolina, you're in 5th place, you've got $150 million and you've gone down in the polls in Iowa. Why should we think you can manage or do anything in this country?
Thank you. Governor DeSantis.
Well,
This is a great window into leadership because she's
know.
focused on a lot of political process stuff, things that no voter cares about, and she couldn't tell you why she failed to deliver school choice to people in her state after she promised it. So she says somehow that is the indicative of, no, leadership is about producing results. We've produced the results in Florida. We did universal school choice. We've cut taxes. We banned sanctuary cities. On and on down the line, everything I promised I delivered. She doesn't have a rationale for why she couldn't get it done. That is poor leadership. You look at me, everything I promised I would do, I've delivered, and you can expect nothing less when I'm the president of the United States.
We're gonna move on now.
I need to respond to that.
Go ahead.
So you want to talk about leadership, and he wants to go and demean and put down. Let me tell you what leadership is. Leadership is the fact that I went into South Carolina that had 11% unemployment rate. Leadership is the fact that we turned it into an economic powerhouse, building planes, building cars, building tires. We were named the Beast of the Southeast. We moved the 11% unemployment down to 4%.
Okay, and then you sold your soul to Boeing. So
we moved 35,000
what does this even matter?
To work. We changed our prison system to where we now have the lowest recidivism rate in the country. We passed voter ID. We passed tort reform. We did pension reform. We paid down our debt. We cut taxes. We made sure that people were proud again. We did E-Verify in the first 6 months, not 5 years like Ron. So don't go and pick on school choice and say that that's leadership. Okay. When I got to the UN, we cut $1 billion off the top, and we took the kick me sign off of our backs, and America was respected again at the UN. I know what leadership is.
We're moving on to a topic, governors,
this
that
debate
kind
kind
of
sucks. I'm not going to lie.
Have made central to your campaigns, and that is China. Governor Haley, American farmers were hurt by former President Trump's trade war with China. As a result, his administration paid out $28 billion in subsidies to farmers. You have vowed to be even tougher than Donald Trump on China. If your trade policies also end up hurting America's farmers, are you prepared to cut a check just like he did?
Well, that's why Trump should be here on this debate stage. He should have to defend it. So first of all, I've said China is our #1 national security threat. I fought them every single day at the United Nations. I know what they're capable of. The first thing we have to do is we have to make sure we stop selling them any land, and we take back the land they already purchased.
You really did a lot there.
We need to go to our universities and we say, you either take Chinese money or you take American money, but the days of taking both are over. We need to stop all of the technologies that are going to China. Biden approved 70% of them. Trump approved even more than that. We have to tell them we're going to end all normal trade relations with them until they stop murdering Americans with fentanyl. And we need to make sure we build up our military. But the biggest thing, I was very attached to China in terms of trade. And the one thing we'll do is we won't wait for the China to
CNN is going to say she won this
Iowans.
debate.
What we'll do is instead we will move that trade
to
where we have friends. We will go and build partnerships. India, Japan, South Korea, Philippines, Australia, Israel. We will go and move that trade over. Right now, you can ask our farmers, when they go and they buy from China, China orders, cancels the order, then goes and tries to buy it cheap. That's what China does. Our farmers deserve better than that.
You're telling me this for the first time.
We will get them trade deals. When I was governor in South Carolina, we sold and we exported everything we were making in South Carolina. When I'm president, we will sell and export everything that's being made in Iowa to those that are our friends, not our enemies.
Thank you. Governor DeSantis, your response?
The way you deal with China is threefold. One, we need more hard power in the Indo-Pacific. I'm a Navy guy. We need more sea power. We're going to build that up. And we're going to have a strategy to deny their ability to invade Taiwan or to get beyond the first island chain. On the current course, they're going to take advantage of Biden, and we're going to rue the day when that happens. Second, we got to decouple our economy, particularly things that are nationally significant to our national survival. And you got to be methodical, strategic about it. There's a lot of moving parts there, but we're going to do that. Nikki Haley's not going to be able to do that because a lot of her supporters make a lot of money in China. And so she's going to talk tough, but she'll cave on that. And then also with here in the United States, she's saying they shouldn't be buying land and be in the universities. When she was governor of South Carolina, the state gave China land. And they were in the universities. As governor in Florida, I banned China from buying land, and we kicked them out of our universities. That's what you want to do.
DeSantisLies.com. He has an economic development arm. You had an office in Hong Kong. On the website, it said that Florida is a great place to do for Chinese companies to do business. And then when we called you out on it, you had the website scrubbed. So we know that that's the case. What I will tell you is we need to focus on what we're going to do to become less dependent on China. And we need to make sure that we look at it through a national security lens. When we had COVID, everybody told you to wear a mask. It was made in China. They told you to take a COVID test. You turned it over. It was made in China. If you go down the drugstore aisle, all those medicines are made in China. We need to make sure we're getting medicines made here, or we need to get it from our friends so that we're not in any way threatened. But I'll tell you, Ron continues to sit there and talk about China. He has done expansions in China. His biggest donor that is backed by China gave them $340,000. So don't go and talk about donors and money. Go to DeSantis DeSantisLies.com, and
Governor
we'll tell you
DeSantis-
all
Look,
about
I know,
it.
I know
Governor
your record
DeSantis,
hurts. I know your record hurts
My
in China.
record
Governor
doesn't
DeSantis,
hurt.
Because
We're
you're
an
doing-
economic powerhouse.
You're talking the opposite of what you did. You were made a big effort to bring them into the state. They had land near a military base. You were in front of the Chinese
King
flag
John,
saying
it
you
just
worked for them.
sucks.
You wrote a
Like,
web letter
it's
to the
just-
ambassador. That's well documented.
I don't know what to
You were
say.
the #1 Republican governor in the country. And even people that on the media who are hostile to me, they say they can't find one instance of me as governor recruiting a Chinese company because I haven't done it. It's not been part of that.
DeSantisLies.com,
And the
it's
Enterprise
on
Florida,
there.
we actually
It's on there.
eliminated. So here's the thing, though. She's backed by companies like BlackRock. She's backed by major companies on Wall Street. They make a lot of money in China. There's a reason why you're in the mess you are in terms of trying to deal with the inflation and everything, because the elites in this country
Governor
have
DeSantis.
sold out the middle of the country for China. She is part of that now, and she's not going to stand
Governor
up for you.
DeSantis, I want to ask about something that you mentioned. You've been talking a lot about.
putting
on the
a poll in
campaign
the
trail,
chat.
which is
Let me know.
decoupling the U.S. economy with
Look at the
China's.
chat, everyone.
China is a top supplier of goods to the United States. The U.S. sells more than $150 billion of goods to China every year. Is it really possible to sever economic ties without inflicting major pain on American business and American consumers?
Sure it is, and it's something that you got to be strategic, you got to be methodical about. You got to focus on the things that are of national significance. For example, I don't think it's a good idea that the pharmaceuticals
it's really close,
come
I'll
from
just
there.
keep it
things
on,
for our
but-
military weaponry, all these important things that if we got into a worldwide conflict, what we're going to ask China, who may be on the other side of that, to continue doing that. So you got to be smart about it. You got to recognize that you're going to have to do some incentives here in this country. Tax incentives, regulatory incentives, but I want to make things here again. You know, I look around the country, there's parts of Iowa that have been hollowed out, particularly in the eastern part, and I've talked to folks and seen what that did for the community. We were sold a bill of goods
Everyone
by
go
a lot
vote
of elites in this
whether we
country
should
that somehow
change to
putting
the
China
Vivek
in the
Townhall.
WTO and granting them most
It's in the
favored
live
nation
chat.
status was going to lead to our manufacturing exporting a bunch of stuff there. Instead, they've gobbled up so much more manufacturing. I don't think you can be a first-rate power unless you have a very strong industrial base. So we're going to do that here. We're going to work on workforce education. You know, not everyone needs to do a 4-year brick and ivy university. That's not the best way or only way for people to succeed. We're going to do skilled trades. We're going to do vocational. We've done that in Florida. It's going to be a really, really big thing. But I just think the middle of the country has to have those good-paying jobs, and we can't
Next
put the
commercial
interests
break. We're
of
making
some
the
of people
decision,
on
so
Wall
go vote
Street
in the poll.
over the interests of Americans
wanna
on Main
switch.
Street.
Let's move on to Social Security. Let's move on to Social Security. According to the Social Security Administration, Social Security will be unable to pay full benefits in a decade if no action is taken. Governor DeSantis, you have said that you're not going to, quote, mess with Social Security, unquote. Does that mean you have committed to never raising the retirement age and never cutting benefits?
So all seniors out there, promise has been made to you. You've paid into this. Every single paycheck that you've had your entire life, they've taken money out of, and that promise needs to be fulfilled. So that will happen when I'm president. Of course, I have a lot of seniors in Florida that depend on Social Security. I know many of them, and I think back to
All
my
right,
own grandmother who
65-35
was,
say we
lived
should
till
switch to
91.
Vivek.
Social Security was her sole source of income. So promise made, promise kept. You know, on the retirement age, you know, it used to be people would say, well, life
Keep
expectancy
voting, let me
is
know.
going up. Shouldn't it mirror that? Well, the problem now in the last 5 years is life expectancy is going down. So I don't see how you can raise the retirement age when our life expectancy is collapsing in this country. That's a huge problem in and of itself. I'll work with both sides of the aisle.
Still alive,
we'll work on
guys.
something for the long-term strengthening, but I am not going to mess with seniors' benefits. In this high inflation environment, groceries are going through the roof. Rent is going through the roof, all these staples, and you get a cost of living adjustment, but that's not enough to cover the costs that have been increased. So seniors are really strapped, particularly those that are on fixed income, and they have to know that we're going to deliver when it comes to their Social Security check. Now, we're going to get inflation down. We're going to get energy costs down. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to help seniors, but I think seniors should know promise made will be a promise kept.
So just a point of clarification, 15 seconds. Removing current seniors from the equation, you're not saying that you're committing to never raising the retirement age or cutting benefits.
I would never raise the retirement age in the face of declining life expectancy. I mean, I think that would be really bad. I mean, just think about it. That hurts blue-collar folks. You get taxed your entire life. Life expectancy.
All right, you know what,
down.
chat? We're
You may
doing
not
it.
even
We're doing
be
it. I'm done.
recouping very
I'm
many
done.
benefits. And so
You guys
life
voted
expectancy is
65-35
declining.
to switch?
Governor Haley?
3
We're gonna
years
switch.
in a row, he voted
'Cause
to raise life expectancy to 70 years
This
old.
thing is just
3 years
terrible.
in a row. Go to DeSantisLies.com and you'll see it. So now suddenly.
Oh, wait. Hold up. Okay, nothing's working right now. I'm very confused.
Of the carbon dioxide emissions that it results in. That's what I would say. Thank you.
The carbon itself is a very valuable asset, and there's going to be a
Where's
mad
the
dash
video?
on the air when people realize you can take carbon dioxide out
There
of the
we
air,
go.
turn it into graphene. You can take the methane out of the air, turn it into carbon dioxide, and then turn it into graphene rather, and then use it as a building material. We need a global coalition so that we don't pull too much of it out of the air, because people are going to start harvesting that carbon dioxide. And I don't want to kill the trees. Like you said, it is food for the greenery. So we need to find some sort of mediated stasis.
We switched.
Right on. So I hope
Guys
that
happy?
addressed your question. Yeah.
I have one more thing I wanted to say. I'm not from Iowa. I've been here volunteering. I'm from Nebraska. But I wanted to say to everyone that is from Iowa, please caucus, because it must be exciting to be a part of all of this and have candidates come. We don't see anyone in Nebraska unless, they're worried about that one electoral vote that we might give to the Democrats. So we don't have a primary till May. So if you are from Iowa, please, please, please caucus on the 15th.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. I'm going to use that as an opportunity, Tim. I'd be remiss if I didn't say it tonight, but I mean it, is every person's vote in the Iowa caucus, you could make the argument that it's like the equivalent of 1 million people in the impact that it has in actually selecting the next U.S. president. I laid it out earlier, and so I don't want to rehash our earlier discussion. I believe we're being led by the system into a trap right now. And I promise you I don't relish this job, but I'm here for a reason. We've done over 390 events in Iowa. That's more than all of the other candidates combined, I think, by a multiple. We're not doing this for any reason other than the fact that I think our country requires, like right now, a leader who's actually able to take our America First movement to the next level, and who is not the subject of elimination in the subject of an actively playing out plot that we can see in straight eyes. And so I'm asking everybody in Iowa who is here to do the right thing for our country on January 15th, and I'm asking you to caucus for me. And if you do, I think we're going to have a major surprise on Monday. And I think we're going to do everything in our family's part, and we're going to succeed at it to make sure that our country's best days are actually, not in some fake politician way, but in a true way, actually still ahead of us. So thank you, everybody who comes out on Monday night to do that as well. I appreciate it.
What's your name?
Elliot.
Hey.
Candace, gentlemen, I appreciate y'all making it out here, braving the inclement weather. So I got to the Marine Corps about a year ago, largely due to how the current administration handled, as Ian so correctly frames it, our surrender in Afghanistan, as well as the way service members were treated in regards to the COVID vaccine mandate. And though I appreciate your answer to the first question, Mr. Ramaswamy, as Commander-in-Chief, do you have any plans as it relates to restoring Americans' trust in our military institutions?
That's a really good question.
And do you intend on holding military leadership who implemented these disastrous policies accountable?
Yes. And I think the way we're going to restore trust isn't by fake jingoism. It's by actually acknowledging the failures and instituting accountability for those failures. It comes on a couple of levels. First is generations of foreign wars that have not advanced our interests. $7 trillion of our national debt owed to the wars in both Iraq and Afghanistan that palpably could just look at the results. 20 years later, for God's sake, the Taliban is still in charge. 20 years later, Iraq is a more broken country than we showed up, sending tens of thousands, about 15,000 of America's sons and daughters' lives sacrificed in those two wars, adding $7 trillion to our national debt. So yes, I do hold accountable the bipartisan foreign policy establishment, some of whom are back at it again, available on the Republican ticket to be voted for U.S. president, to be trotted back and to bring back a Dick Cheney vision for our foreign policy that should be relegated to the dustbins of history. So yes, we need accountability. I think we also need accountability in the nearer term for the self-hatred that our own military is perpetuating in our own ranks. And there's a connection between these two. I'm referring to the rise of sort of the woke infection in our U.S. military ranks. These are not two separate issues. What happened is that General Mark Milley's of the world wanted to deflect the left-wing criticism. Keep in mind, it was generally a Republican idea to favor the Iraq War. The left used to hit him for that, to say, okay, well, we'll just say the magic words, systemic racism, white rage, whatever you want us to say, but go away. We'll blow the woke smoke to deflect accountability for the institutional failure of the military itself. How do we get this right? Restore the true purpose of the U.S. military. What is it? To win wars, to actually avoid wars through being strong in protecting our own homeland right here at home, which is more vulnerable than it has ever been. So I believe that the top purpose of the U.S. military should be to protect Americans against threats, make our national defense spending directed towards our own national defense. That includes cyber attacks, super EMP attacks that could take out our electric grid in a matter of days that we're more vulnerable to now than ever. I do view it as an invasion on our own southern border, and I believe an outward-facing function for our U.S. military at our border, as we talked about earlier, is an appropriate use of our military. And that's how we restore trust. I think people would be happy to serve this country if they knew it was actually to serve Americans rather than to fight somebody else's war halfway around the world so some Ukrainian kleptocrat can buy a bigger house. That's not going to happen on my watch, and I think that's how we restore trust. Thank you. Is Apurva here, my wife? If Apurva's here, bring her up at some point. She's going to come. She's putting the kids to bed, but she wanted to make it for the end of this. So,
Shout out to Apurva, the generator.
What's your name?
Alex. All right. Nice to see everybody here. Big fan of the show. Big fan of you, Vivek.
Thank you.
So in primary schools in Russia, they currently teach their students jab and a cross before they ever teach a hook for 2 years. In China, they have masculinity training for their young men. If you look at the obesity rates in America, we've done a severe disservice to our youth in physical education, where traditionally you look at like the De La Salle program out in California back in the 1930s. We were going to go a certain direction, and then we flipped to another where kids can just, opt out of PE. What can you do to help make America's youth strong as President of the United States?
Yeah. I think that let's put aside the presidential authority here. I think that a lot of this should be driven by the states. I'm a constitutionalist. I believe that which is not reserved to the federal government is reserved respectively to the states and to the people. And I believe that because they're not my words. They're the words in our Constitution, in our 10th Amendment. But let's just talk about the broad policy. I've actually just as a citizen advocated often for the SAT, standardized testing. I think you have verbal and math. They added a writing section. I think it's not bad to bring back a physical fitness section as well. Just measure it. Different institutions can put different weight on what they want to weight it in. Not all students, not all schools should weigh the math scores the same way as they weigh the reading score, as the same way they weigh the writing scores, the same way they weigh the physical fitness score. But I think we should make it something worth aspiring to in this country. So that avoids any kind of mandating or anything like that as a basic first step, just signifying we're measuring something because it's worth measuring. Carbon emissions, not worth measuring. Physical fitness in young people, worth measuring, right? And so the things that you actually measure are the things that actually presumably matter. We used to have the presidential fitness test. It was actually under, I think it was President Obama, and it might have been a little bit of a pet project of Michelle Obama for whatever reason, to eliminate the presidential fitness test. That's not what it sounds like in the context of me saying it, of the U.S. president, though we could determine I think it doesn't hurt for a president to disclose how many push-ups and pull-ups they could do too. It doesn't hurt. But that's not what I'm talking about. It refers to the presidential fitness test in junior high school. That refers to a number of attributes of how you're able to perform on basic parameters of physical fitness that allows us to hold our system accountable and teachers accountable and schools accountable for how well we're doing on that metric, just as well as how
we also need school lunches that aren't
these days
full
how
of
poorly
crap.
we're doing on the metrics of math or reading proficiency. So I think that measuring it alone and making that a norm in this
probably part of
country
it, too.
would be a free, non-cost enhancing, non-liberty infringing way of actually doing what I think is good and important for our country. And oddly enough, I don't think it's that odd actually, that's going to have a palpable impact for the better on the mental health epidemic in this country. Actually, a lot of young kids are going to be mentally and psychologically a lot better off if we actually start just measuring and aspiring towards improved levels of physical fitness as well. I think most of us know that intuitively. It's definitely true from a data perspective as well. So that'd be my answer to your question. And I do think, I've already been talking about it. People have asked me, why is this guy running for president? What does this have to do with it? Well, what it has to do with it is it still relates to that root cause and that loss of purpose in our country. And I do think that measuring physical fitness is strictly a good step for our youth and including integrated into our schools and standardized testing.
Quick pause, because everyone's talking about it in chat. You know what's funny, though? The one thing they need to abolish from the physical fitness test, I remember when I was a kid, I couldn't even get it, is that one where you have to, like, I don't know if you guys had to do this, where you have to, like, touch the back of your, like, you have to do your arms like this and connect them. I couldn't do that. And they said, oh, you're not flexible. Like, okay, who cares? I did all the push-ups easily. Mile time was easy. Your leg flexibility was easy. Like, I can touch way past my toes, but because like my arms like don't fit here, they were like, you failed that part. I was like, dude, what does it even have to do with fitness? So I do hope they abolish that one part of it, because that is by far one of the dumbest parts of the entire test. I don't know what it measures. I don't know what it proves, but I remember having to do that.
Thank you.
Anyways.
Appreciate it.
What's your name?
Ryan.
That was easy. Well, not for me. I don't know. I can't do that.
So I followed your campaign since basically the beginning, and I love your message.
And I was a
think you could
hurtler in
fix
track,
this
so
country.
I'm flexible, just not
We've
upper
seen
body. I don't know.
what they've done going after Donald
Vince
Trump.
coping. Oh yeah,
Indictments,
post mile time.
even trying to remove him from the ballot in certain states. My question is, how do I vote for Vivek Ramaswamy without sending the message that I am okay with what they are doing to Donald Trump?
I think your question weighs on the minds of a lot of people I met today. What I saw in many of the rooms I was in was a sense of struggle with that question of loyalty. And I think our loyalty, my loyalty, and I know Donald Trump's loyalty and the loyalty of the people participating in this caucus process is to this country. So the question is what's right for the country. Let's just agree with that. Whoever you're going to vote for, that's what matters here. Not loyalty to me, not loyalty to Trump. It's loyalty to the United States of America.
I have short arms. What do you want me to do?
I'm blunt about this.
I have short arms.
I think if you want to
I've
save
always had like a
Trump
wide torso.
and save this country, a vote
doesn't
for me
prove
is actually
anything.
the way to go. What they're doing to Donald Trump is wrong. I have stood up against it at every step of this process.
I was literally a hurdler, but I'm
to
not
the point
flexible.
of derision, to the point of people have people have had all kinds of conspiracy theories about me, but one of them, and more popular ones, is there's some kind of Trump plant. That Trump and I had some kind of deal early on in this campaign to somehow eliminate Ron DeSantis, as though this was a worthy goal for a guy who's got other things to do in life than to focus on eliminating Ron DeSantis from contention. No, that was ridiculous. But I'm saying that I've been so strongly supportive of Donald Trump in the face of these prosecutions that even many people circulated nonsense like this. I've stood up against, I went to the Miami courthouse, I've stood up against these persecutions. For God's sake, I have actually written a FOIA demand and submitted it, Freedom of Information Act request, to know what Biden told Jack Smith, what Merrick Garland told Jack Smith, followed through on that, taken legal steps, and I hope we get accountability. I think that I wasn't planning on announcing this tonight, but might as well just say it. I think tomorrow morning, if not by noon, by tomorrow morning in the next 48 hours, I am submitting an amicus brief to the Supreme Court, arguing for why they need to overturn Colorado's disastrous decision to try to keep Donald Trump off the ballot, because it's the right thing to do for this country. And as somebody who's been trained in the law, I feel like a sense of obligation to do that if somebody who understands the Constitution. It's my belief that every other Republican, myself included, needs to withdraw from any ballot that forcibly withdraws Donald Trump from the primary ballot, because that's how you actually stop the brazen election interference in our own primary. If every other Republican nullifies Maine, then it has no impact. So that's the length to which I've gone. And so people know this about me when I'm saying this. At this point, it is my firm conviction that this system, which has ratcheted up the threat level one by one to eliminating Donald Trump from the ballot, will stop at nothing. I'm increasingly certain will stop at nothing to keep this man away from the White House. So I think the best way to literally save Trump is to at least have arguably somebody the system might actually, even some elements of it, prefer less than Donald Trump for what I'm bringing to Washington, D.C. And I think that's also what this country requires. I think they duped him at many steps. They told him you can't fire those civil service bureaucrats because of so-called civil service protections. Read the law. Those civil service protections do not apply to mass firings. Mass firings are what I'm bringing to the D.C. bureaucracy. So I will honor the man and I have, and I think it's the right thing to do, and I will do it as the next president, because he kept us out of foreign wars that didn't advance our interests, and he grew this economy. Those are no two small accomplishments. But our America First agenda does not belong to Donald Trump, just as it doesn't belong to me or anybody else up here. It belongs to you, to us, to we the people of this country. And we owe it to this country to make sure that movement does not end with Donald Trump, which is what this system has set up to do. I believe we're being led into a trap right now.
Ron DeSantis might be polling better if he talked.
So I'm asking you to do the right thing for this country. If you want to support Donald Trump even, or what he represents, is actually more precise. The right way to do that, to see this through for the country, is a vote for me in this Iowa caucus on Monday. And I think there's an emotional component to this. I actually think we need to vote with our brains. There's times when you vote with your heart. There's times when you vote with your brain. Your heart can get you to the doorstep of why America First matters. But now voting with your brain is asking, are you going to look back? Here's the thought experiment that I'd like for every voter in this state to go through. And I think a lot of them are considering myself for Trump heading into Monday. Do you think you're going to look back a year from now and say, whatever, God forbid, happens this year, say we were shocked by what happened? I mean, last time it was a man-made pandemic and a tech-rigged process leading up to an election that we all know was absolutely an unfair election. That was last time. What do you think they're going to do this time? Are you going to be shocked next January and say, oh, I was shocked that happened? Or are you going to say, we should have seen that coming? And I think it's exactly going to play out. If it's not me in the nomination slot, it's going to play out exactly the way I laid out. It's going to be Trump in a two-horse race versus a puppet who they can control. One way or another, they're going to eliminate him. We're going to look back and say that should have been obvious, when in fact right now people are behaving as though it's not. And we're going to regret the result. And I don't think there's a good chance. I don't think we have a country left, not the same country that we know and love. And so we owe it to this country and to our founding fathers to make sure the 250-year experiment does not end this year and that we have yet another 250 years and then some left to go. That's why I'm asking you to vote for me. If you want to save Trump and save this country, vote for me. And I hope that gets you to the place where you make the right decision for this country. Thank you, man.
I think we have enough time for two more.
Yeah, sounds good.
Two more questions.
What's your name?
Tim.
Good name.
It's a great name.
It's okay.
Hi, my name's Tim.
Notice how almost everyone asking a question, at least from what I've seen, is a young man. It says something. It says something about the kind of aisle of our movement he's speaking to. And that's part of why I appreciate him as a candidate.
And I have a question about civic duty voting. I'm trying to get my friend to get on the Vivek train, but he likes a lot of the most of your things except for civic duty voting, and so I have his concerns. He just doesn't think it has a point to it. Young adults voting, there's no other way to get young Americans to vote besides making it harder. The test will only hurt the Americans who don't have access to good education or resources. So poorer
they shouldn't vote
communities is what
anyway.
he said. Also, you're an adult at 18. You can be tried by court. You can go into the workforce and be a part of the community. You should be allowed to vote without taking a test like an American citizen, is what his concerns are.
Cool. So what I would tell your friend is, first of all, I would say this in a friendly way, relax, in the sense that anything touching this would require a constitutional amendment. But why don't we talk about forgetting the plumbing of how we accomplish it? Let's at least see if we agree on the spirit of it, which is that in order to be a full citizen of a country, and citizenship is not about what you get, it's actually about what you give. Women didn't have citizenship and didn't have voting rights in this country. People think it means, what do you get? You get the right to vote? No, women were citizens all along, didn't have the right to vote. So if you actually trace our history, what's the origin of citizenship? Citizenship is about allegiance. It's about duty. It's actually why I don't believe that dual citizenship is a coherent concept in the United States. It's all about, or in any country, it's about allegiance. It's about, and with allegiance comes a duty. So with that said, the basic point I was making is, what's your basic duty at least we should expect of someone to a country? Some people will make cases for mandatory military service. I don't. But I think the basic table stakes of your duty to this country should be to know the bare minimums about this country and the Constitution and our history.
I agree.
It's mainly just the Constitution and the way the government works. And we know that that's an intuition we already track because If you're an immigrant to this country, we say you can't vote. You can have all kinds of other benefits. We give all kinds of benefits to illegal immigrants to this country. There's all kinds of things we do. But at least when things have worked the way they're supposed to, you can't vote in this country until you become a naturalized citizen, which requires you to pass a basic civics test. And so if we require that of a legal immigrant to this country before they cast a ballot at the ballot box, I think it's reasonable for every high school senior who graduates from high school to at least know the bare minimums about the country that every immigrant has to know as a condition for becoming a voting citizen of this country before the age of 25. I think it's a reasonable thing to ask. Now, if you've had life experience as an adult, I'm willing to drop it. If you say that you've served in a military or first responder role, great. That's a different way of having allegiance or service to a country. But the bare minimums, so nobody has to take a civics test there, but the bare minimums are to say that you have some knowledge of the country of which you're a citizen.
So that's what the founding fathers believed, actually.
My campaign staff hated me for rolling out this idea because it didn't poll well. I said this idea. They said, "Well, at least can we poll it?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to see the data." It did not poll well. I came back and I still rolled it out in the speech where I was planning to because I think it's the right thing for the country. So I'm aware that it has not been a friend to my vote gathering process in this campaign. But I think people have come around to it, actually, over the course of the year. Some of my other positions have had the benefit of this too, my position on Ukraine or otherwise. But in this one, it so happens, I think people have come around to it. A 10-year-old girl in Iowa, her name is Lena, she came to one of my events, having heard about this controversy. She heard me take a beating from it from mostly on the left. They claimed it was Jim Crow or something like this. Everything's Jim Crow. If you're a 10-year-old and somebody says Jim Crow, I think you might think it like refers to air. It permeates and it's everywhere. But anyway, she heard a lot of this criticism. And she printed out the 100-question civics test. Most adults in the United States would fail it if they took it right now. 60% is a passing score. She's 10 years old. She comes out with a printout with a handwritten note showing me and telling me that she got 100%, 100 out of 100 at the age of 10. So I don't think this is something that results in some socioeconomic struggle. If this 10-year-old girl in Iowa can know the first thing, I mean, questions like, how many branches of government are there? What branch of government does the U.S. president lead? I don't think it's too much to ask an 18-year-old to know what branch of government the U.S. president leads before they show up at the ballot box to cast a vote for the U.S. president. I think that's a reasonable thing to ask of a country. And I think that's what it means to be a citizen of this one. So.
I will say, pause really quickly. My only concern with this take is not that I disagree. I 100% agree. In fact, I've said this long before Vivek. You can go watch some of my old videos on it. But say he is the nominee in 2028, which a lot of people want, and I'm very open to. Is this going to go over well in a general election? Because it seems to me like something they could totally trash him for. So that's kind of the give and take of this stuff sometimes. Sometimes getting too close to the truth can screw you over when you're running for president. So I'd love to hear how you guys feel about that, because that's my only concern about this take. I totally agree with the principle of it, but even I said at the time he said this, I was like, I worry that is something that could easily screw him over, because most people who are currently voting don't get it. And, you know, they'd be like, he's against democracy or some stupid nonsense. So let me know how you guys feel about that.
So tell your friend to look at the spirit of that and don't worry about the plumbing so much. Thank you.
What's your name?
Hi, I'm Brittany. Big fan of Timcast, big fan of Candace. Hello.
Hi.
Okay, so Vivek, thank you so much for being here. I know the weather.
I swear I've seen her
not
face
ideal
before
right now, but thank you for being here. So your slogan has been truth, and it's all over this room. Many Americans over the years have felt lied to by our government, and that they have pulled the wool over our eyes with so many occurrences in history, especially in the last 4 years. Recently, you have been speaking what recently happened with January 6th, and you're constantly be getting attacked. So thank you for speaking the truth on that.
Thank you.
There have been so many whistleblowers, such as Snowden, to expose the truth to the American people about what is going on behind closed doors. My question to you is, do you have it on your radar to grant pardons to those who told the truth to the American people? And
another
also
great
to release
question.
Documents that would uncover a lot of unknowns to the American people, or to provide protections to future whistleblowers?
Yes, yes, and yes is the answers to your questions. I mean, I think that so it's not pardon, be a clemency, but I think that if you swear an oath to the Constitution, your job is to keep it. And so you cannot systematically participate in the violation of those constitutional freedoms and constitutional rights without exposing that to the public. And I think we, the people, deserve a government that just tells the people the truth again. Not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. Sometimes it's ugly. That's when we need it the most. And I think we've been systematically lied to. You could just go to the last 8 years, 7, 8 years. Trump-Russia collusion hoax. Made up. COVID origin. Couldn't say that it came from a lab in China when it was obvious that it likely came from a lab in China now that we know that it did. How our money is being spent in Ukraine right now. The truth about what happened on January 6th. The truth about the Nashville transgender shooter manifesto. So we actually went down to Nashville, Candace and I did an event there together, calling on the local police or the FBI, either one, to just release that manifesto. And how we were actually lied to, even in that community. They said there's a lot in there that it's not what you think it is, but it could be dangerous to release. Then it gets released, and we see it was just actually a race-baiting, psychologically challenged person. A government that has systematically lied to its people. The reason people don't trust the government is that the government doesn't trust the people. Trust is a two-way relationship, actually. And so I think the two ways we rebuild trust in this country. We had the event last night. Did you? Yeah, you were all the way. You were there for the press gaggle afterwards. That was a fun press gaggle we had last night. People should watch that one. It was the longest one I've done in a long time. We do the events and the press will come up afterwards. It's about 35 minutes. I think we want to rebuild trust in this country. If two things happen, I think we have taken a quantum leap forward. We're back on track as a country. And they're easy to do. The President of the United States tells the American people what we know about the subjects where the government has lied to the people. UAPs, tell us the truth. What happened on January 6th? Just tell us the truth. What was Saudi Arabia's role in 9/11? We know they lied to us. Just tell us the truth. Just go straight down the list. What was or wasn't known about the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? Just tell us the truth. How many times as a government official, we saw the Twitter files, anytime a government official has pressured a private actor or a company or a bank or a tech company to do something the government couldn't do directly, just publish it as a first step. Tell us the truth. Was our taxpayer money used to fund the gain-of-function research that resulted in the origin of the COVID-19 pandemic? That's the first thing that it's up to a U.S. president to do from the standpoint of the government. And then if just one person in the media, just one, I don't need NBC and ABC and CBS and CNN and everybody else doing it at the same time, just one of them, look their audience in the eye and tell them when it came to the Hunter Biden laptop story that was suppressed on the eve of the last election, when it came to the Trump-Russia collusion hoax, when it came to the origin of COVID-19, when it came to the truth of the totality, at least even, of what happened on January 6th, or the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot, or whatever. We didn't tell you the whole truth. We're sorry about it. Here's why we didn't. These are institutional failures. And here's why we're going to make sure that never happens again. And I know you're still not going to trust us tomorrow, but we hope to re-earn your trust by repeatedly telling you the truth transparently. And we regret what happened. Great answer. And we fired the people who were accountable for hiding it from you. If you have a president who does that from the White House, and just one, not all of them, just one actor in the mainstream media who does that, looking their audience in the eye on a TV screen and telling them the same thing, we are well on our way to reuniting and reviving this country. If I'm your president, that's going to happen from the presidency. And I think there's probably at least one good, enterprising, smart person still left there in the mainstream media that could step up and do the same thing. And if those two things happen, I am confident that we don't have to be mired in this divisive decline that we're in, but that we still can be in our ascent. I believe that. And I'm going to do my part. And I hope those in the media who have failed have step up and do their part. And, all I'm going to ask is of the citizens of this country to do your part here in Iowa starting on Monday. And that's what gets us there. So thank you. I appreciate you asking the question.
Sometimes I think that it's more valuable to lie to the people. And it's actually better in that we're talking about like secret weapons programs. You mentioned UAPs. If we're working on like the atom bomb, they didn't want to come out and be like, by the way, Germany and everyone listening, we're building an atom bomb. They were like, are you building an atom bomb? No, we are not.
Okay, but that's like totally different from the JFK assassination.
You want to blatantly lie and not even say that the thing is not existent.
So I disagree about the distinction between secrecy versus lying.
Yeah.
Are there certain state secrets, they need to be state secrets? Yes. Systematically lying when asked about it, I think, is a different matter. And so I think that's a hard line to draw. But you and I would still agree that at a certain point, you have a government that still tells the truth to the people again. And I think we deserve to know the truth of all the way what happened what's the truth of what happened with JFK? I think we should know. I think the public should know. We've been non-transparent about it at every step of the way. People call me conspiracy theorist for asking the question. That's not the point. The point is the government just deserves to, at a certain point in time, tell the people the truth again. And I disagree with you even in the near term. In the short run, it could be a more convenient thing to do to lie to the people. But in the long run, I think the answer is always to actually stand for the truth. And if you get into the specifics, even of geopolitics, this relates to the historical neocon neoliberal view of strategic ambiguity, right? So non-transparency at home goes hand in glove with the foreign policy worldview of strategic ambiguity. It's a whole worldview that says you're going to actually be in a stronger position if you don't tell people what you're going to do. I actually view it the other way. I think that if we have clear red lines and actually say that, you know what, we are nuclear equipped and here's where we are. Yeah. That's actually going to, if we tell a country that if you cross this red line, we're actually going to have major consequences to pay for it, that's more likely to actually avoid war than it is to actually engage in strategic ambiguity. And so it's just a totally different worldview from the traditional neoconservative neoliberal vision that I'm bringing, which is transparency at home, which actually translates to you don't need the national security charade if your whole foreign policy strategy was also grounded in truth. In actually saying that this is what we're okay with, and this is what we are affirmatively not okay with. And here are the conditions under which we will blow you to annihilation because we have to. And if you cross that red line, we follow through and do it. But the rest of the time, we're not going to pretend like that's a possibility either. And so it's a total alternative worldview.
You need red lines.
All the way up and all the way down.
But they need to be clear.
But it is grounded in, yes, absolute truth and transparency. And so that's what I'm going to bring. And if you think that that's dangerous, if you think that that poses risks to the future of our republic, then I'm not your guy. I'm not your candidate. But if you believe with me that in the long run, this is the way to respect the founding ideals of this country and to lead a country that is stronger over the long run for relying on truth, both in our foreign policy and our domestic policy, then I don't think there's anybody in this race who comes close to being able to deliver that in the way that I will. So that's what I offer.
I want to thank Vivek for having us out and for everyone else here who's joined and has hung out with us. We've got a special members-only segment, VIP. We're going to be hanging out at this private party, keeping the conversation going for a little bit while longer. So head over to timcast.com, click Join Us, and in a few minutes, we will have up a live feed hanging out on the couch, talking a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes. And I want to say thank you to everybody who showed up here physically, everybody who watched the show. You can follow the show at TimCastIRL everywhere. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Make sure you smash.
All right, folks. Well, there you have it. There was the Vivek Town Hall. I will check briefly to see if anything interesting came out of the Trump one. That, I think, went from 9 to 10. It was much more tightly timed, which is why we weren't able to really get into it. But I don't want to snub the guy who is actually going to win the primary. So let's see if there's kind of anything to react to there. But, yeah, I mean, Vivek is Vivek as usual. Very right about a lot of things and has a bright future. Okay, let's see. I'm just going to use ALX's feed here. Let's see what Donald Trump had to say in his town hall, and then we will do some super chats. So feel free to super chat right now. If you got thoughts on the DeSantis debate, thoughts on Vivek, thoughts on any of the Trump stuff we're about to watch, and then we'll call it a night. Because to tell you the truth, I'm pretty burnt out. We streamed for a total of 3 hours in total today? It's been a long day. I'll put it that way. Okay, so I guess here you go. Donald Trump called Ron DeSantis fancy shoes. Haven't seen this? Let's see what this is.
He's going to be out of the race very soon. He's going to be out very soon. You know, I watched him last night. He's standing up with his shoes, his fancy shoes. And he's going to be out of the race within, a lot of people say before New Hampshire. He's going to be out of the race.
Well, realistically, if Ron tanks in Iowa and Nikki Haley ends up beating him, which for the record, I do not want to happen. Okay, I really do not want to happen because I don't think that would be a good indicator of where our party and our voters are if Nikki beats Ron in Iowa. But if that does happen, yeah, I don't see how you justify a path to victory beyond that. Now, what I will say, and this may be a hot take with some of the hardcore Trump loyalists, but I really hope that Ron kind of realizes that the presidency, especially in this cycle, really wasn't his to take. And they eventually reconcile somehow. I don't know how. DeSantis is not going to be the VP anyway, considering they're both from the same state, and there's a lot of complicated stuff that would have to go on there for Florida to be eligible on the ballot. But and again, that might be a hot take with some of the hardcore Trump loyalist people who say, no, he's a traitor, he should never be forgiven, etc., etc. But I do think that Ron, and you saw glimpses of it tonight, right? He does have things to offer the conservative movement in the Republican Party. I think the precedent he set as governor of Florida was very important in a lot of ways. He kind of set this model, even if it wasn't perfect. I know people will point out the places he came short, but he generally set the model of, Republicans and conservatives wielding state power effectively, right? And so, genuinely, I say this and I mean it. This is how I feel. You can disagree. You can say, no, he's a traitor, we should get rid of him. But I don't want him to just be cast totally to the ash heaps of history. I think he has a lot of things to contribute still to conservatism in the future. I just think when you look at how this campaign was run, and especially if Haley beats him in Iowa, which again, I don't want to see happen, but if it does, the presidency is just not for him. Right, but I do think something like, I don't know, attorney general, something along those lines in a Trump White House, he could be very good at, right? Because he's good at getting things done in terms of just pure policy. That is true. Like, I will not dispute that. I mean, again, people will point out, well, his record in Florida wasn't perfect. Look, everyone loved DeSantis until he ran for president as governor, and I still objectively look at it and say, no, he was a good governor, a very good governor, arguably one of the most important that conservatives have had in the 21st century, but the top executive role nationally is just not something he's clearly cut out for. But I still think, you can use his skills in certain ways that are more effective. You can learn lessons from him. And so, that's just my take on it, and I will reiterate that after tonight. There are positive things DeSantis has contributed to the discussion, to the movement, to the country. And, frankly, I think most Republican voters agree with that. Most Republican voters hate it when DeSantis and Trump go at each other. That's the truth. Look at the comment sections on any time that happens, whether it's from Trump or DeSantis, right? That's how a lot of people feel. And maybe it's naive, maybe it's idealistic. I hope there's a reconciliation there. I think it'd be best for the movement. It'd be best for both parties overall. We do need unity. We do need unity going into this election and beyond. And, I don't know. That's just my take on it. Anyways, let's keep watching. So here's Trump saying, I had no wars. I'm the only president in 72 years. I didn't have any wars. Okay.
I think he had very little chaos. I think most of the chaos was caused by the Democrats constantly going after me. And remember this.
Nathan Mercer, we just watched it. It literally just ended. What are you talking about? We were watching it. It ended, and now we're reviewing the highlights of Trump.
Remember that with phony, Russia. I mean, if you look at Ukraine, everything was phony. The FISA warrants, the lying to Congress, they had chaos. They were the ones that caused the chaos. We didn't have chaos. We got the biggest tax cuts in history, the biggest regulation cuts in history. I had no wars. I'm the only president in 72 years. I didn't have any wars.
Here's, I guess, one thing that's interesting. That's true, by the way. But Donald Trump, on his pick for vice president, he says, I know who it's going to be. So apparently, at least according to him, he's already selected one, but let's see.
Who would be in the running for vice president?
Well, I can't tell you that, really. I mean, I know who it's going to be.
Give us a hint.
We'll do another show sometime.
Well, what about any of the people who you've run against? Would you be open to mending fences with any of them?
I will. I've already started to like Christie better.
But anyways, I did see a report this week that he was thinking about Lee Zeldin. Maybe that's not necessarily my very top choice, but I think it's a solid one. I don't know. Let me know in the chat. Who do you think Trump's VP is going to be? who do you think it should be? But I think that basically sums up the highlights of the Trump town hall. I mean, I'm scrolling on one Twitter account here, so I don't really know. But, you know, we'll try to watch it back and maybe do a highlight video tomorrow. Okay, with that said, folks, we're now into Q&A, super chats, whatever. We'll go to, like, I don't know, 11:10, 11:15 here. Let me know your thoughts on any of this stuff. Again, folks, super chats are open. Questions, comments. But I'll do this. Takeaways from tonight. Again, I actually think that's my most important take, which is I think it's just time for DeSantis and Trump to reconcile. Okay? Not tomorrow night, obviously, but eventually. Because you watch that debate with Nikki Haley, it's pretty clear neither of them are going to come close to winning this nomination. Let's be real about that. I think the greater picture of DeSantis's campaign, you know, it's not, the issue was certainly not that he was underfunded or under-resourced or whatever, right? He just failed to ever really hit a chord with people. Again, why do I say, what does that show to me? You know, again, I get it. The hardcore Trumpers will say it shows that he's a traitor to MAGA or whatever. It shows to me that he just doesn't have what it takes, you know, to be president. But that's fine because most people don't have what it takes to go through all the process of running and campaigning and becoming the president. But at the same time, to me, it doesn't show that he's totally useless. Because I mean, you look at the DeSantis-Newsom debate, for instance, when the presidential talk was largely out of it. I know Newsom tried to do it a lot, but it was just my policy versus your policy. DeSantis did very well in that environment. Why did he do well? Because he was a very good governor. That much is true. I don't deny that. So I think, you know, I think one of the problems in politics is that everyone wants to be the alpha. Everyone wants to be the leader. Everyone wants to be the number one. That's understandable. But I also think political movements and coalitions actually function best when the best alpha is in the alpha position and the best supporting roles are in the supporting roles position, right? Not everyone's meant to be the president, just as not everyone's meant to be the Secretary of State or the FBI director or the Attorney General or the Chief of Staff, right? So, you know, again, like every time I watch DeSantis campaign, you know, he has a lot of good things to say. I don't deny that at all, but it's just like, everyone agrees, right? The campaign is just missing the it factor. And why is he missing the it factor? Because the guy's not meant to be the top dog, the top leader. He just doesn't have what it takes, right? But that doesn't mean he's worthless either. So again, you know, I think it'd be best for unity. It'd be a useful application of the skills I genuinely think Ron DeSantis has, to reiterate that. Especially if Iowa goes very badly for him. You know, just drop out of the race and try to reconcile with Trump. And, you know, who knows if Trump is even that open to it. Tell you the truth, I don't know on that front either. You know, Trump definitely has an ego. I wouldn't deny that. But I'm just saying mutually, I actually think that would be best. Mike Cernovich is the person who came up with a take, by the way, to have Ron as Attorney General. So I'm kind of stealing that from him. But, you know, that's how I feel about it. You guys can let me know. As for Vivek Ramaswamy, I do see in that guy someone who may have the chance, may have the it factor to do what it takes later down the road. I'm not making an endorsement for 2028 because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the field's going to look like. I don't know who's going to run. But you see what he did in this campaign, right? Going from like 0% to one of, at least on the internet, okay? I don't know how wide his appeal really is. We'll find out in the future. But at least on the internet, you know, has become someone who's widely popular. That guy to me does show, hey, maybe down, but I would still say it's not his time because you look right now, Trump is the alpha in this race, right? And no one's going to take him out. That's the truth. I mean, maybe we get a big surprise in Iowa and then suddenly, you know, I have to reconsider all of this. But you look at the polls, you look at the way it seems like it's going to go. We kind of know the story already. But yeah, that's basically how I feel. And then lastly, Nikki Haley sucks as usual. Okay, do I have to do that whole song and dance again? I don't know if it's necessary. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on the three candidates we have left right now. Chris Christie dropped out earlier today. If you guys missed that, you can watch the stream where we were reacting to it. It was quite funny. There was the hot mic moment. All of that is caught on the stream, so feel free to go back and watch that. But all right, let's read chat. Again, folks, open to super chats right now. But let's take a look here. Vivek deserves better than VP. He needs to be in a place where he can speak up and speak out. Yeah, well, yeah, I basically agree with that. I think, you know, there could be a situation where he gets totally relegated, you know, as the running mate or whatever. I don't know, you know. But I would like to see him have some type of role. Who knows if VP's the best one. I have come around more to the idea of him being VP than I was before. Because I do think even if, you know, he's not exactly like the suburban woman appealing candidate that most general wisdom says that Trump should pick, he does totally contrast Trump's personality. He's basically the polar opposite of everything Trump is, and that sort of yin yang may be good for them, but you know, I don't know. I don't know, to tell you the truth. Like, I think a lot of people will be totally upset if Trump doesn't choose Vivek as VP. I don't feel that way. I said starting this year, like, I am now open to it. But if he chooses a Lee Zeldin, I wouldn't complain about that either. It's different. It's different approaches and different strategies, right? And there's different philosophies on what you should choose in a VP. You know, some people say double down on the base, which Vivek would do. But arguably, again, his personality contrasting Trump's so much might be the kind of balance you need. But that's usually what you actually look for in a VP, right? Is sort of balance. They iron out your weaknesses. So Trump in 2016, why did he choose Mike Pence? Well, maybe in retrospect, it doesn't make any sense. But at the time, it was because Trump didn't do well with evangelical voters. And so he chooses kind of the most pious, Christian-friendly candidate that there was to be the VP, right? In 2024, I don't know if that's as much of a problem for Trump. I think most evangelicals in America have come around to him. I think the core concern he's really going to have is with independents, moderates, suburban women, right? The people who find him too divisive. And I think someone like a Lee Zeldin would be good for that, because clearly you look at what he did in New York. He is very good at coming across as a moderate, right? This is the same reason I've pitched Glenn Youngkin as another good idea, is because, you know, he's a proven guy who's done well in the suburbs, polls way better with suburban women than Trump, you know, kind of appeals to that. But again, the reason I kind of see Vivek as a decent wild card pick in that regard is, again, even if he is very hardcore MAGA, America First aligned, maybe that contrast in personality could sell something. So again, I'm not opposed to the idea at all. I'm actually very open to it. But if Trump doesn't choose Vivek, I would also clearly understand why. And again, I think some people won't. I will get it. Only concern I have is likely whoever Trump's VP is going to be is going to be seen as the logical successor and probably going to get not a free ride, but a likely coast ride to the nomination in 2028. Assuming Trump wins, of course. This is all on banking on some assumptions there. But, you know, with that said, it's like, do we want Lee Zeldin to be the heir apparent to Donald Trump? I don't hate the guy, but I don't know if it's necessarily my first choice. Same with Glenn Youngkin. You know, I have very favorable views toward both of those people. But at the same time, it's like, is that what we want 100%? So that's another concern, and that's why I'm also open to the idea of Vivek doing it, because it's like, okay, well, we know that after Trump, the movement will be in good hands. You know what I mean? So I don't know. There's a lot of give and take on all sides. But to me, as long as he doesn't choose a Nikki Haley or some character like that, I'll kind of understand it. And I think we just have to make do of, you know, whatever happens next. But that's how I feel about the VP decision. Probably not the most coherent. I'm sorry, I'm not saying like I want this person definitively or that person. But it's a complicated decision, and it really comes down to what is your strategy? What are you trying to go for, right? the base would like Vivek a lot, but would suburban moderates like Vivek? Which is the point of it. Who knows? Again, like I said, that personality thing suggests maybe it's possible, but at the same time, who really knows? So, you know, we'll just have to see what happens. We'll have to see what happens. All right, Andrew M. for 2 Canadians says, Trump and Doug Eyebrows Burgum in 2024. The only problem with that, okay, the only problem with that, Andrew M., is that I could 100% see a scenario where not even Doug Burgum, but his eyebrows try to coup Donald Trump. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Those eyebrows have grown so large that they are transcending, okay, the laws of physics. And it's like, how long before they develop a mind of their own, you have Skynet eyebrows, and they literally just start like rampaging on the White House. All right? So, you know, I have to say, I do have my concerns about that. All right? That is very alarming to me. But, you know, who truthfully knows? Who truthfully knows? Okay. Again, folks, last call for super chats. We'll end the stream at probably around 10 p.m. or so, and I plan to do recap videos on all of these different town halls and debates, so stay tuned for that. But let's take a look. I'd like to see Lee Zeldin or Ben Carson. Yeah, my only problem, how much does Ben Carson add to Trump's coalition? Would be my only question. Right? Because I'm not anti-Ben Carson at all. But what's the logic there in terms of adding to it? Because if you want to double down on the base, I think Vivek is a better option than Carson. Right? But, you know, is he going to appeal to, say, the black vote? Which I guess is the question there. And I reject the idea that just because you put a black candidate up there means you're going to do better with black people, right? And truthfully, I think Donald Trump, if you're going to flip a portion of the black vote, I think Donald Trump already, you kind of see it, has what he needs on that front. So would Ben Carson be like the best choice in terms of adding to the coalition? I don't know. I wouldn't revolt against the pick, but I do have my questions there. I do have my questions on that part. But let's take a look here. But Vince Dow, his eyebrows have potential to bring bipartisan unity because we will be in awe of it. That is true. How is Kamala going to debate those eyebrows on the stage? You know, that you do have a point there. You do have a point there. So I understand that. I understand that point 100%. Let's see. Why be a moderate? If you want to stand on principles, you're not at all a moderate. Oh, you're talking to someone else in the chat. Okay, I'm not going to intervene then. I'm not going to intervene. Let's see. Leave Ben Carson alone. Let him enjoy his retirement. Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with that. And what was the criticism of Carson back in 2016? It's like he's kind of low energy, which is not his fault. I'm not attacking him for it, but is he the best addition to the Trump ticket? You know, especially, obviously Biden is older and more senile, but they are going to try to use Trump's age against him too. I do think you need someone who's a little bit like younger and more vibrant, right? Whereas Carson, again, like, remember the jokes back in 2015 was that he was putting everyone to sleep, okay? Again, I'm not attacking the guy for it, but is he the best choice for that? You know, that's also why I say I would be open to the idea of Vivek, is because, like, he kind of brings the energy factor, you know? You need someone who does that. Lee Zeldin, I think, could do that, right? Youngkin, I think, could do that. I don't know if Ben Carson necessarily could do that, you know? But I don't know. Thoughts on Kristi Noem, Vince? Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that pick. I'm really not. Because I think that goes by the logic. It's the same thing I said with Ben Carson and the black vote. That, hey, because you choose a woman, you're going to do better with the female vote. And, like, I don't know if that's really true, right? Now, the reason I say Zeldin and Youngkin is because it's proven on the record they do well with suburban women, but, you know, it's not my least favorite pick in the world, but at the same time, I think in many ways Kristi Noem is highly overrated, right? You know, this is the same woman who caved to the NCAA because she I believe, if I remember correctly, it's been a while, but she vetoed a trans sports bill, right? Keep the men out of the women's sports. And she tried to make her own reasons for it, like, oh, freedom and liberty or small government or something like that. But it really boiled down to she was scared that the NCAA was going to pull some tournaments out of South Dakota, and she is heavily controlled. She takes a lot of money from the Chamber of Commerce, right? And so it's like, I think, first of all, she's highly overrated as just the politician in general, you know? Not the worst governor in the country, but this, like, based conservative warrior, I don't know if I buy that necessarily. But even on the political electability front, you know, I believe it was her first election or maybe her re-election, I forget which one. But if you actually look at her margin in South Dakota, she won that state by one of the narrowest margins, if I'm not mistaken, that any Republican has done in recent years, right? So, according to the electoral results, she was actually unelectable by the standards of South Dakota. She won, obviously, because it's South Dakota, but she actually underperformed. And so, again, would I totally revolt? Not necessarily, okay? I wouldn't boycott the ticket in the way I might if Nikki Haley was on it, but I'm not particularly impressed by her. I don't think she's very solid on the issues, but okay, I get it. You're trying to balance out the ticket. But B, more importantly, electorally, what does she benefit Donald Trump? Because if you're going to be bad on the issues, at least try to electorally help Donald Trump. I don't see that. I would love to hear people try to explain to me where they see that. I get it. She's a woman. Again, I reject the logic that just because it's a woman means you're going to do better. The actual reality, to tell you the truth, sometimes with females is they actually often don't necessarily like each other, okay? Ever heard your girlfriend gossip if she works or whatever, or school? So, yeah, you know what I mean? So I don't buy it just because, oh, female equals female vote. Totally reject that logic. And same goes with the black vote, to tell you the truth, and any vote, really, right? The identity thing is not enough for me. And I think you often see in elections, sometimes Republicans believe that, and it totally blows up in their face, because even though a lot of people are stupid, the electorate still is a little more complicated than that, okay? And very often the people who would vote on identity purely wouldn't vote for Republicans anyway. Okay, so you can run a black Republican, they're still, and call them, hey, you're a hypocrite because you're against the black conservative. It doesn't actually make a difference. But again, like I said, on the electability front, Kristi Noem was a very weak candidate when she got elected. Okay, so clearly she actually didn't really resonate with the voters. And so, again, like, would it totally doom Donald Trump in the election? Not necessarily. Would I protest openly against it? Probably not. But it's just not a pick I'm impressed with. I think he can do far better, is my answer on Kristi Noem. In fact, let me take a look here actually at her margin so you guys can see what I'm talking about. It's been a long time since I've even thought about Kristi Noem, so I may get some of this information wrong. So let's see if I can verify what I just said about her in the governor's election. But let's see. So in 2022, she dominated, but she was an incumbent. I believe the one in question is 2018. Let's take a look here. Yeah, here's what I'm talking about. Okay? I get it. 2018 was a blue wave year, but it's still South Dakota. So this indicates a red flag, in my opinion. Kristi Noem only won 51% to 47.6%. Okay? A margin of about 11,000 votes. Keep in mind, South Dakota, right? If it was a swing state, I'd forgive it, right? In South Dakota, to only win by 11,000 votes, to me, that's a red flag, right? Because if you're going to make an electability argument, you have to kind of show you have, even if you haven't won, because Lee Zeldin didn't win, but you have to show that you have overperformed expectations in elections. If you're going to pick a candidate based on that, you have to prove that. And to me, this election result right here shows me something is wrong there. You know what I mean? It's way too close for comfort. So I don't really see that angle to justifying Kristi Noem. Again, just my thoughts on it. You can let me know what you think. But yeah, I was right about this. I'm remembering it correctly. Yeah. Does that not raise red flags to you guys? 51-47 in South Dakota? Even if you add in the whoever voted for the write-in votes, even if you add that into Kristi Noem, it's still not an impressive result by any means. So is she as strong of a candidate as people think she is? Oh, you like her because she's like a good-looking woman and a Republican. Okay, I get it. But these results, they don't make me feel the best about that pick, if that makes sense. Slayer Dork says population, South Dakota isn't that red. The population lives in blue areas. Well, okay, well, we can, compare. Let's see, like 2020 election result, South Dakota. In the presidential, it went 61-35, give or take. So, again, I get it. I get it's a blue wave year. But in my opinion, you got to pick someone who has shown like they outperform the expectations as the candidate. Again, if you're choosing based on electability, because if you're choosing purely based on like who's the best on the issues, who's the best heir apparent to Donald Trump, Vivek takes the cake on that. It's easy, right? Like none of these other people I think that are on the list come close. So again, if I were going to choose someone on electability who I think is going to do better with the places Donald Trump struggles, I would choose someone like Zeldin, who way overperformed what Republicans do in New York. Or Glenn Youngkin, who way overperformed what Republicans normally do in Virginia. If you have Kristi Noem, who way underperformed what Republicans usually do in South Dakota, even if you want to make excuses or have your reasons for that, to me, it still kind of screams not the best choice if you're choosing on electability. Does that make sense? So that's the way I sort of see that, Again, like I said, it's not my least favorite pick in the world, but that's just kind of how I feel about that. Well, Lee was in a dark blue state, Vince. Well, yeah, I get that's why he didn't win, but I'm saying he by probably 20, 30 points, I don't know the exact margin, way outperformed, and that's my point. Is if you're choosing someone on electability, you want someone who overperforms expectations. That's the point I'm making there. And especially, I would argue again, if the struggle is suburban voters in general, mostly suburban women, but kind of suburban voters, I would think you also want someone who comes from a relatively suburban or urban state, right? That's the other issue, I think, choosing someone from a very rural state like South Dakota is, there's no relatability there, really. And there's no proven track record of being able to do well in those types of places, right? And when I think when you take a look at how Lee did so well, first of all, he did better in New York City than most Republicans are supposed to, but especially the way he kind of did so well, especially in like suburban New York, Staten Island, places like that. That kind of resembles, if you're going to make the closest comparison possible, the suburbs of, say, like Phoenix or Atlanta or Detroit, Philly, places like that. You kind of want someone who has shown they can handle those types of environments. Because again, this is where Donald Trump is weakest. Donald Trump does not have a problem with rural voters, okay? If it were like Ron DeSantis, where the big question on everyone's mind is, can you turn out rural voters in the same way Trump does? Then yes, I would say, maybe pick a rural candidate, maybe pick some that makes more sense to me. But if Donald Trump's biggest struggle electorally is suburban voters, then you want someone who sort of appeals to that angle of things. You see what I'm saying? And, those are some of my concerns about Kristi as a pick. Again, I'm not super aggressively against it. It's just really not my favorite choice to me. I voted for him when he ran in New York. I met the guy. I love him. Yeah, well, good for you. Good for him, you know. And Youngkin doesn't seem to be on the shorthand list of consideration, but for a long time, he's been one of the best picks for me because, A, he won, which Lee Zeldin didn't do. No fault to Lee Zeldin. New York is more blue than Virginia, but hey, you kind of have that credibility to you, right? I won. I'm the sitting governor of a state. And you consider Virginia is such like a suburban state. Like what carries the population is the DC suburban areas, right? Arlington, stuff like that, and Richmond, right? Because everything outside of there is pretty red in Virginia, but that's what carries it so blue. And the fact he was able to flip that, you know, you look at Loudoun County and that type of stuff he was able to do. Again, that kind of shows to me, to me personally, again, if you're going off of electability, I think Youngkin is a perfect choice. Perfect choice. Doesn't seem like it'll happen. Youngkin is taller than Donald Trump, and that might be an optics problem. But to me, you know, that I do like that choice a lot. Lee Zeldin, though, similar idea. You know, I think that's a good choice. But I don't know. We'll have plenty of time to talk about Trump's VP pick later on, you know, in the coming months and stuff. I guess let's first see what happens in the Iowa caucus, right? Nova, yeah, exactly. Places like that. But yeah, with that said, folks, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to leave a like on the stream. We'll probably wrap it up here. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. We did our first 2 streams of 2024 today. I keep saying 2020. What's the matter with me? I was about to say it again. Unbelievable. 2024. Okay, my mind is going. Okay, I'm Sleepy Joe at 20 years old. I'm becoming Sleepy Joe Biden. But we had very good numbers, so I appreciate it very much. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. We will... I mean, if something important happens, we'll be live later in the week, but we will certainly be live Monday night to cover the Iowa caucus live. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Then, you know, the videos will come out as usual. And yeah, thank you to everyone who tuned in. Alpha Moves Only. God bless. Have a very good night. And peace. Play the outro. There you go. My voice hurts. Man, that was a lot of talking. It's been a while. All right. Good night. Let's close out on the wait screen because I just made it today and it's very simple, but I actually like it a lot. Look how aesthetic this thing is. Look at that. It's all Miami, which is funny because I live like 6 hours from Miami, but you know, Florida, so it's all the same to most people. Shh, shh, don't tell anyone. Such a vibe. You know, I know people have a lot of criticisms of Miami, but it's one of the last few cities in our country that is semi-functional. And so it does deserve some credit. Look at that. Look at that water. What a beautiful place. Probably not where I'd want to live long term, but it is a beautiful... Look at that. It's like LA, but nicer. It's like what LA should be. So true. All right, good night, guys.